It is 10:01. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. The Final Four is set in the NCAA men's tournament, and Tennessee's season came to an end with a 69-50 loss to Houston Sunday in the Elite Eight. The Vols struggled to score in the first half with only 15 points at halftime and shooting less than 29% from the floor on the day. Tennessee's season finishes with a 30-8 record and a second consecutive Elite Eight appearance. So Houston moves on. They will face Duke in the Final Four. On the other side, Auburn and Florida play for a spot in the national championship this coming Saturday. The Final Four is made up of all one seeds for the first time since 2008. NFL owners' meetings are underway this week in Palm Beach. One of the most contentious items on the docket is the Tush push. Owners will vote on the proposal by the Packers to ban the play tomorrow morning. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone. Good morning. Welcome in on this Monday, the last day of March 2025. A lot to discuss, some moving parts and pieces. I'm Lucas Panzica. This is the Buck Rising Show, but only with a little bit of Buck Rising, almost how we like it. Robert Walsh is on the other side of the glass, and NFL owners meetings underway down in Palm Beach. There are a lot of people down in South Florida for this week's festivities. NFL coaches, GMs, and owners discussing rule changes, talking about the #1 overall pick, an unusually large contingent around Titans head coach Brian Callahan in the media scrum earlier today, as the Titans, of course, hold the #1 overall pick. Buck will check in at 11:20 to discuss what he took away from that chat. A breakfast with Brian, Palm Beach edition earlier today, and everything that will take place down there at owners' meetings throughout the course of the week. So we'll hear from him in hour two. But first, Bert, it's a sad morning for many of us, myself included. Talked to you on the phone last night. I was still a little wounded from Tennessee's blowout loss to Houston in the Elite Eight, 69-50. The Vols' first Final Four appearance remains elusive for this program. Sad.
It's tough, but it's better to love than lost than to not never loved at all. See, imagine if you would have lost to Kentucky. I feel like you would have felt a lot worse now than you would if you wouldn't have just walked into this slaughtering that happened on Sunday.
Yes, we watched the game together on Friday against Kentucky among several other people, a lot of Vol fans, a lot of Kentucky fans, too, in the establishment we were at. They didn't have a lot to cheer about throughout, especially the second half. But that's the thing. Think about the roller coaster of the weekend for Tennessee fans. There's a strong argument to be made that that game against Kentucky Friday was the biggest win in program history, right? It cements your third Elite Eight appearance ever. It's the only time Tennessee's ever played Kentucky in the NCAA tournament, so the biggest game in the history of Tennessee's most hated rivalry against the Wildcats. So you go from that, a blowout win on Friday against your biggest rival in one of the biggest moments in program history, to Sunday. And that game was over at halftime. 15 first-half points by Tennessee. It's the lowest mark in a first half ever by a top 2 seed in the men's tournament. They start 0 of 14 from 3, finished 5 of 29 from beyond the arc. And honestly, Houston just looked like a better version of Tennessee. It felt like this was, if Tennessee was going to match up with the 1 seed, this is the one you wanted to face, and maybe we're eating our words now that Houston ran away with a 19-point win. But I still felt like it was a better matchup for Tennessee than Duke, than Auburn, than Florida, even though Tennessee's had proof of concept of beating both Auburn and Florida this season. But in the way that they play, the profile of the teams are somewhat similar. But Houston, man, tough, physical, elite defensively. All of those things have described Tennessee all season long and really during the Rick Barnes era. But Houston just looked like a supersized version of that. Dominating in the paint, 30-14. Tennessee's jacking up shots in the first half because they have to. They're stifled. I mean, Houston's cutting out every gap. Tennessee has no opportunity to get into the lane to try and score around the rim, and they're getting good looks, too, from deep and nothing's falling. So Tennessee follows up one of the more satisfying wins in the history of the program on Friday, running away from Kentucky with a sobering end to the season. And it's different. This is a different feel than Tennessee's last couple of heartbreaking tournament exits, because it's not the end of a season. It's the end of an era for Tennessee basketball. Where this program goes from here is one of the bigger pivot points in the Rick Barnes era since he started establishing that run of success in that 2017-18 season. Zakai Zeigler and Mashack's time as Tennessee players is over. And I think those two go down as one of, if not the most accomplished duos in the history of the men's basketball program. I mean, starting with Zakai Zeigler alone, right? From where he began as a prospect coming out of New York that had next to no offers, everything he dealt with growing up in New York, whether it was health issues before he was even born, the economic situation around his family, and then he gets to Tennessee and his mom's apartment burns down in New York and the GoFundMe campaign. He has attached himself to the Tennessee fan base in a way that not many players have, regardless of sport. So it was hard to go back and listen to the post-game press conference, and Zakai Zeigler, who was understandably emotional as that run comes to an end. This was Zeigler after the loss to Houston.
You know, on the mark that, I wouldn't even say the mark that I left on Tennessee, but the mark that they left on me and my family, you know, they changed our lives, really. And, you know, I'm just so thankful for each and every person that's a part of our nation. I'm so thankful for the coaches. I'm so thankful for my teammates. So thankful for everybody that's a part of Tennessee as a whole. You know, accolades, I couldn't do anything like that without my teammates. I couldn't do anything like that without my coaches. You know, the mark that Tennessee has left on me is really crazy to just think about. It's been the best 4 years of my life. Changed my life. And, you know, I feel like Knoxville is a place that I'll call home forever.
That's Zakai Zeigler after the loss to Houston yesterday, with Tennessee season ending at 30-8, a second consecutive Elite Eight appearance. So, program now has 3 Elite Eight appearances all time, 2 of them in the Rick Barnes era in each of the last 2 years. And when you look at what Mashack and Zakai Zeigler have been able to do together, first of all, going 4 years at the same program with the rarity that is in today's world of college athletics. For those 2 players, 3 Sweet 16s, 2 Elite Eights, an SEC tournament title, an SEC regular season title, over 100 wins, 60 of them at home, 4 25-plus win seasons. Of course, Zakai Zeigler breaking multiple records, assists, steals, both for the program and in the SEC in terms of assists this past season. And they are together for 9 NCAA tournament wins in their time at Tennessee. You showed me this morning, Robert. Tennessee up to 31 NCAA tournament wins. That ties Xavier for the most without a Final Four. You are an unbiased voice in this, so tell me if this is just Tennessee alum Lucas talking. Is Tennessee the most overdue program in the country, at least in the SEC, for a Final Four appearance?
Sure. Yeah, you or Xavier, since you're tied now. But you wanted to talk about the number 1 seed that you would want to run into. Like, Houston was be the number 1 seed. Did you see this Matt Norlander stat that came out? I believe it was yesterday he put this out. That of the top 10 KenPom teams to ever make the Final Four, 4 of them, all 4 this year's Final Four, are in the top 10 KenPom teams of all time. It's insane. It's like, no, there's not a single number 1 seed that you would want to run into. But as far as Tennessee being due, like, it just seems like, I probably say this too much, but there was an old coach at ECU, Ruffin McNeil, who would say, like, there's progress or there's steps to winning, right? First you'll lose big, then you'll lose small, then you'll win small, then you'll win big. It feels like Tennessee is in the win small portion. They're on the doorstep of the winning big. They are teaching their program. They are setting the boundaries, setting the foundation for what is needed to be a big win. So I believe that they're knocking on the doorstep. Now, can they replace again? Can you replace the leadership? Can you replace the players? Can you replace the time? That's the big question now. But it seems like they're knocking on the door.
Well, that's what makes it such a bitter pill to swallow, because they were knocking on the door last year, and we had that discussion. Well, that was their best shot when you get a mercurial player like Dalton Knecht to come in and take over a season the way he did. You come up short, you fall against Zach Edey and number 1 seed Purdue, and you think that was the best shot. And then this team obviously adds Chaz Lanier and Igor Milicic Jr., Felix Ukpara. They address a lot of needs in the transfer portal. They carry over the continuity with Mashack and Zakai Zeigler and Jordan Gainey and Cade Phillips and all those guys. And then that discussion is being repeated now. Oh, this was Rick Barnes' best opportunity to get to a Final Four. In fact, we put it to a poll at Lucas Panzica on Twitter. Was this team Rick Barnes' best shot at a Final Four appearance? I think last year's team was, in terms of ceiling, better than this year's team. But right now, 75% of the audience voting, yes, this was Rick Barnes' best opportunity. But either way, he has not had a reset like this. And we're going to talk to Mike Wilson of Knox News coming up next, and he can kind of get into this in a little more detail. I don't know that Rick Barnes has had a full reset like this in terms of identity, culture of the program, all of those things, like the one he's about to face this offseason, with Zakai Zeigler out the door and Mashack. So it's a pretty big crossroads right now. And Tennessee has done a really nice job every offseason in the transfer portal. And they will return a lot of players around the rim, and Cade Phillips and Felix Okpara and J.P. Estrella, who missed the entirety of the season with an injury, will be back next year. But there is one guard coming back next year with this team, and that's Bishop Boswell. So a lot to talk about in terms of Tennessee's needs and how they'll go about addressing those in the transfer portal. And it is the end of a season and the end of an era for Tennessee basketball falling in the Elite Eight. So 4 1 seeds, to your point about those Ken Palm stats. First time since 2008. Is that the way we like it? You go with that? Florida, Auburn on one side, Duke, Houston on the other.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. Because the games are going to be awesome. The last 3 games, are going to be knockout, drag-out brawls, which I'm cool with.
Yeah.
It's the best teams playing the best teams.
100%. 100%. So there you go. Tennessee season comes to an end. Where do the Vols go from here? We'll talk about it with Mike Wilson of Knox News coming up next on 104.5 The Zone. Tennessee falls in the Elite Eight for the second straight year. Houston just smothering the Vols from start to finish. Made a run, cut it to 10 on a couple of occasions, but couldn't quite get it to single digits, and Houston moves on. Tennessee's season comes to an end. Where do they go from here? Mike Wilson of Knox News was in Indianapolis covering the game. He's covered the Vols all season long, and he joins us now on 104.5 The Zoe. Sans Buck Rising, the way we like it. Mike, thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm only on because Buck is not on.
It's a good way to go about things. We only get a little bit of him today. He's joining us from Palm Beach at owners' meetings at 11:20. So this is all a happy balance.
Yeah, some things are better in small doses and in moderation, and that's definitely what's going on here.
Yeah, he's one of those things. Tennessee, unfortunately, was hitting three-pointers in very small doses yesterday. The majority of them 4 out of the 5 in the second half. I mean, was there any point in that game, Mike, where you thought, Tennessee might be in this thing?
No. Houston led by double digits for the final 32 minutes, basically, and Tennessee got to about 10 there in the second half, but problem was, Houston's defense and their tempo, everything's so good that you have to be almost perfect to come back in that moment, and Tennessee wasn't going to get enough stops. Houston's getting the shot clock down low and then hitting three-pointers, so there were moments where it seemed like Tennessee had a push, but you can't really come back from that many down against a team like Houston with how good they are, but also just the style of play and the efficiency.
Is it fair to say it felt like Tennessee was playing a super max version of Tennessee? Like I felt like maybe a few Tennessee opponents probably felt in some of the Vols' best performances this year.
Yeah, that's a buzzsaw, wood chipper, whatever you want to call it. That Houston team's incredible. I thought going into the tournament they were the second best team in the country. I might have that wrong. They might be the best team in the country. They're just so confident and settled in what they do. It was impressive to watch. And certainly everything worked well for Houston, and nothing really worked well for Tennessee.
Certainly the hottest team in the country, 17 straight wins. Houston has not lost since late January. Mike Wilson of Knox News with us. @by Mike Wilson is where you follow his work on Twitter. So what was the feeling post-game, Mike? How unique was that for you as Tennessee has had, for the most part, at least an element of a run-it-back feel year over year in the Rick Barnes era? It's very rare nowadays in college athletics. Barnes has kind of accomplished that with some of the guys that have stuck around throughout the course of his tenure. But just how different did that feel post-game, talking to Zakai Zeigler and Mashack for the last time in that type of setting?
Yeah, comparable to last year in a way with Josiah Jordan-James and Santiago Vescovi, but a little different. To your point, Zakai Zeigler and Mashack were still coming back off that team last year, but definitely similar last year with just two guys who've been around for so long gone. But it is a restart. It's going to be a reset going to next season just in terms of the volume of turnover, a little bit larger than Rick Barnes' experience. There's been a couple of 6-7 newcomer type off seasons, but this one's more like an 8-9 newcomer off season. So it's going to be a dramatic overhaul. And I know opposing fan bases would probably say it feels like Zakai Zeigler has been in college for 10 years, and to some extent covering him, it feels that way. You've been around the guy so long for so many years, and same with Jemai. So yeah, it's a total changing of the guard now.
How do you kind of put into perspective the impact those two have had on the program? And Barnes himself, right? Especially in the case of Zakai Zeigler.
You can't. I'd have to spend an hour on this call with you probably to try to summarize that. What those two guys have meant. Obviously, everyone knows Zakai's story and the underdog side of everything and how he came in and leads as one of the most beloved Vols of all time. And Jemai Mashack, who as a freshman was an end-of-the-bench kind of guy and developed into an absolute monster and a staple. And I kind of wrote about it last night, but culture is a buzzword in athletics. Like, you always hear people talk about program culture, program mentality, all those sort of things. But when you talk about Tennessee, you have to talk about those two guys and the extension of Rick Barnes they are and all those cliches, but they embody and live those things out. Set a standard for Tennessee, drew players like Dalton Knecht and Chaz Lanier to Tennessee. There is much a reason as any for why this has been the greatest stretch in Tennessee basketball history.
You've written about this at Knox News, but when you look at where Tennessee goes from here, considering the guys coming back, whether it's Felix Okpara, Cade Phillips, JP Estrella from injury. Obviously, an emphasis there on post players that are returning. But even then, Mike, how much of that is assuredly going to happen when you look at last offseason with the exits of Tobe Awaka and the surprise that was Jonas Adu bolting to Arkansas? Nothing is a sure thing now in college basketball. So how do you even begin to summarize Tennessee's needs going into next season and where to even begin?
I mean, you begin in the perimeter and at guard because that's where you have no one, even potentially on the roster, really. I mean, you need a veteran point guard with starting experience at the power conference level. You need a couple wings who can score, preferably one or two that can shoot really well. You need some athletic forwards because you don't really have anyone at that 4 spot right now. I mean, those are the primary needs. But, yeah, I mean, you've got to pay attention to everywhere on the roster because you just don't know in this day and age. I mean, the portal can be a thing people use to actually leave. It can be a thing they use to leverage more money in NIL. I mean, you just don't know what's going to shake out with rosters at all at this point.
So are there any names that have popped up early that Tennessee is paying attention to that Vols fans should kind of be monitoring as Rick Barnes builds out this roster for next year?
Yeah, I mean, Isaac McNeely is the first one because he's visiting Tennessee tonight and into Tuesday, a Virginia transfer. He averaged 14.4 last year, shot 42.1 on three-pointers, and obviously that's an ideal fit for what Tennessee needs on its roster. There will be a lot more names to come out in the next few days. But that's the first one that's coming in and visiting straight off the jump. So I'd pay attention to that one for sure. I think he visited Louisville this weekend, and Tennessee's getting the other visit. So seems like they're right there in that mix.
Is there something to the impact you think that Dalton Connect obviously had and Chaz Lanier had, coming from similar backgrounds, mid-major and then popping off in that last year? And we'll see where Lanier ends up in terms of his pro career. Obviously, Connect was a special example. How much do you think that kind of aids Tennessee this offseason in attracting those type of talents that are looking for that one last swing at a major college program?
Yeah, I mean, the Dalton Connect factor helped with Chaz Lanier, so certainly there's going to be a double factor now of Dalton and Chaz. There's a proof of concept now of, hey, come into this level and we can showcase you and you're going to have a shot at the next level because of that. I mean, it's a great selling point, especially obviously that position. But heck, Igor Milicic improved his prospects. I thought Jordan Gainey, as much as anyone, is a transfer portal success story because you look at a guy who came in as, a 3-point shooter is kind of what people knew him as. And he just got better and better and better to the point where he could win Tennessee games. I mean, almost won that Florida SEC tournament title game, kept Tennessee in the game yesterday, won them that Illinois game. So I mean, there's a lot when you talk about Tennessee's transfer portal success, and Jordan Gainey has to be mentioned in that as well.
Mike Wilson, our guest of Knox News on 104.5 The Zone. But that's where it just gets sobering, Mike. Hearing you rattle off those names, we understand the impact Zeigler, Mashack have had, and Chaz Lanier out the door after breaking the program record for three-pointers in the season. Igor Milicic Jr., Darlin Stone-Dubar even. Jordan Gainey, 17 points off the bench, really came along, especially late in the season as a scorer, a sixth man for this team. Like, you just go down the list of guys that are out the door, and it's this rebuild from scratch, from culture, from guard play, almost every element of what you need to be a successful program, save for a couple of post players that come back. Like, does anything in the Rick Barnes era compare to the challenge he has in front of him this offseason?
No, I mean, not really, because it's different than those other times. Like, there's been roster overhaul where they've brought in a lot of freshmen, a lot of newcomers, but this is as heavily predicated as that will be on the portal. This is the first time in the portal era that there's been this dramatic of a roster overhaul. So it is different in that. I mean, the needs are clear. The options are going to be clear too, because the portal is full of names. So Tennessee's going to have options. And again, they have a great recruiting pitch in it. But yeah, it's different. It's different because it's not as reliant upon high school recruiting as some of those previous overhauls were. So this is different, and it's going to be a lot of work for Tennessee to build out its roster.
Yeah, there wasn't a true freshman that really had any impact on Tennessee this year. I mean, is that going to have to be the opposite next year? It feels like Tennessee's going to have to be relying on some of these guys coming in via recruiting.
I think there will be some of that. I think Amari Evans has a shot to be a really nice player at Tennessee, and curious what his role will be immediately because he's probably more of a defensive-first guy as he's coming in. I'm not going to throw a Jemai Mashack label on anyone because of how Jemai Mashack is leaving this program, but a guy that could develop into that sort of thing. Troy Henderson as a point guard coming in is a guy who could certainly be a backup right away. So they're going to have guys that play. And Dwayne Brown in Tennessee's returning a lot in the post, but that's a guy who's a big winner and rebounder from Alabama. So there are guys that have a shot to have a role, but obviously it's going to be dependent upon what Tennessee does in the portal with instant impact guys.
So a chalky Final Four. Obviously, all 4 1 seeds are going to be playing it out in San Antonio this weekend. To you, who's the best team left in the tournament right now?
I thought it was Florida going in. I think it's Houston at this point. And Houston-Duke is going to be fascinating to watch because, I mean, Duke has a case as being the best team as well. So that's going to be really interesting to watch, but I do think it's Houston.
What's a bigger what if for you for Tennessee? Because you say that, and I think about how Houston was, just that close to being bounced by Purdue on Friday, right? 62-60, Purdue storms back. It's a wild last sequence. Houston with that bucket right under the rim to get the lead and win to move on to the Elite Eight. And you wonder what would have happened if Tennessee had faced 4-seed Purdue. Would have been much less of a home crowd for the Vols in Indy yesterday. But what's a bigger what if for you in the last couple of years? Tennessee missing out on a 1 seed and potentially avoiding Purdue last season, or if Purdue had beaten Houston on Friday night and that's who the Vols had faced?
Man, it's hard because it's so hypothetical. I did say to someone last night, though, that you could argue Tennessee was a Houston push-off against Purdue away from being in the Final Four because that play right before the inbounds play was an offensive foul on Houston that went uncalled. I don't know. I mean, I would assume Tennessee would have beaten this Purdue team because this Purdue team wasn't nearly as good on the inside as last year's was, obviously, with Zach Edey. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to speculate on both those things, but last year was different in that there were 3 juggernauts, and Tennessee had a shot to be that 4th 1 seed that might have had a better path. But this year was brutal. And I think that's a hard thing to grapple with for Tennessee fans probably is this is one of the best years of college basketball ever. If you look at analytics, Ken Pom, all that stuff. I mean, the best 4 teams are in the Final Four, and it's a hard year for Tennessee to have had a really good team where there were 4 absolutely elite teams.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Mike Wilson with us. All right, so basketball season is done with. Do you move on to 100% baseball now as Tennessee swept South Carolina over the weekend and is the number 1 team in the country?
I mean, there'll be heavy focus on that for sure, but, yeah, I mean, basketball portal season is going to be pretty crazy for all the aforementioned stuff about how many pieces they have to fill and how many players they're going to have to get. So the month of April is a pretty hectic one when you balance those 2 things for sure.
@by Mike Wilson is where you follow his work, following Tennessee's action in the portal on the basketball side and the rest of the baseball season to come. Mike, I'm assuming you're coming back from Indy still?
Yep, in the car on the way back right now.
All right, safe travels, man. Appreciate the time as always and your work throughout the course of the year.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. Appreciate you.
Mike Wilson with us on 104.5 The Zone.
You couldn't tell he was on the way back by the tone in his voice. You could just hear
Man's
the
been through
pain leaking out of him.
I mean, just from the grind of covering Tennessee's run in the NCAA tournament. I know Will had a rough ride home yesterday. I felt for him. It was a home crowd too, man. I mean, that was the thing that you were happy to avoid with Purdue losing to Houston. You definitely had to play the better team, but had Purdue won that game, maybe it would have been a better matchup on the court, but no doubt about who would have had the home court advantage at Lucas Oil Stadium. It would have been Purdue in Indianapolis, but yeah, that Tennessee crowd, I mean, maybe the biggest pop is when there was a 3 to cut it to 15 at one point, right? Obviously, Tennessee got close, cut it to 10 a couple of times, but there were some pivotal points there where they had opportunities to cut it to single digits. Whether it was Jemai Mashack going in for what looked like a 3-point play because they called it goaltend. They reviewed, wiped away the goaltend. He gets 2 shots, misses both, right? Jordan Gainey getting a good look at a layup to cut it to 8. It's just off the mark, and that kind of was the story for Tennessee. They showed some fight, were able to kind of claw back, and to be honest, Robert, it kind of reminded me a lot of that college football playoff game against Ohio State. Just the way that Ohio State sort of stepped on Tennessee's neck right from the jump. Houston did the same thing. And then there's that brief moment in the Ohio State game where even as bad as it was, it's an 11-point game at halftime and you're getting the ball to open up the third quarter. And you're sitting there at the break thinking, I don't know how we are within 11 of this thing, but okay, let's see what happens. It's kind of how it felt when Tennessee crawled back to make it 10, but in the end, just a dominant performance. I couldn't help but have flashbacks of that college football playoff game.
You know, a lot of people make a big to-do, and rightfully so, about, Rick Barnes losing a lot here, Zakai Zeigler having to go on to the transition to the next part of his career, but no one really talks about when the season's over for the people that cover it. No one talks about the plight of the press, where a Mike Wilson goes home. He lays all his press credentials out on his bed, all of those large sums of paper, the numerous trees that were killed to give you those halftime and end of game reports. He just spreads them all on his bed, lays down, and just lets out a big No one talks about that. No one talks about that moment. How many press credentials do you think is on Mike Wilson's bed when he gets home? How many of those pages of papers are strode around like a cartoon? Remember in cartoon movies, people used to knock papers out of people's hand and it looked like it was snowing? That's what I imagine it looks like inside of Mike Wilson's bedroom.
Is that what Buck's house is going to be when he gets back from Palm Beach after the grind of being in South Florida for owners' meetings?
Oh, no, sorry, you misunderstood me. I was talking about press people who care about this. See, it's tough when you care and you cover it. Buck does not care. Yeah. I've not seen one credential in Buck's house. I've not seen one post-game paper floating around irrelevantly. But inside Buck's house, it is all Egyptian motifs and new furniture and cats, and there's nothing that would symbolize. If you broke into his house and you're like, yeah, well, I wonder what this guy does. Let me look through his drawers. You would be like, is he a detective? Is he a travel agent? What does this guy do? You would have no idea what Buck did from the inside of his house.
And you're also talking about a reputable journalist in Mike Wilson.
Correct.
We need to be wary to make that association with Buck. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. To you, was this Rick Barnes' best shot to get to a Final Four as the head coach of Tennessee men's basketball? You can also jump in on the F&M Bank chat, 104.5 The Zone TV on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. As we remind you to join 104.5 The Zone for our 2025 Golf Classic, presented by Ferguson, Monday, June 9th at Nashville Golf and Athletic Club, located right in the heart of Cool Springs, a historic golf course. Breathtaking panoramic views of the beautiful Middle Tennessee countryside, and the Golf Classic will be highlighted as it always is with great food, cocktails, prizes, special guests. We love going out to the Golf Classic every year, especially in the summer with the weather. Purchase your team today. Choose between 2 flights, 8 a.m. or 1 p.m., and spend the day teeing off with us. For more info or to purchase a team, visit 1045thezone.com.
And listen, I'm willing to throw my hat out there in the 1 p.m. flight. If you get a team together, I will be your cart's mascot. I will ride around. I will be your caddy. I will irrelevantly tell you which kind of clubs you should use. But the best part about these golf course shows are we just get to go out there and hang out. Like playing golf, yeah, that's fun. But like getting to get a cocktail and then you notice, oh, there's Ron Slay on a golf cart and he's driving it and there's no roof on it. It's the chicanery, the shenanigans that happen in between the games. It is like a big party on a golf course. So if you guys haven't been before, you need to check it out. Get your passes, get your teams together, come out there, play some golf, smoke some cigs with me and Kirby. It's a lot of fun. I look forward to these every single year.
I have yet to golf during the Golf Classic.
Yeah, same. So, you don't have to golf to have, for us at least, you don't have to golf to have fun.
Yes.
I would say, but that is also, neither one of us play golf, and neither one of us are competitive at golf. I'm even terrible at, what's the like bowling for golf? What's that called?
Bowling for golf?
No, you like show up and you can golf off the balcony. Come on.
Well, like a driving?
Top golf. Come on. You know what
I've never been to Top Golf. We should go.
What do you do?
Show outing.
What do you do? What have you done?
Usually just sit at home, stare at a wall or something.
We got to do Top Golf. It's a lot of fun.
615-737-1045 is how you jump in. And then Jael also mentions on the F&M Bank chat to Tennessee basketball wrapping up the season. Brett Bertelkamp and Bob Kessling. Last game on the call for the Vol Network. So truly the end of an era. I mean, in multiple different facets on and off the court. Legendary run for Bob and Bert, nearly 30 years of being together. But can't wait for the next phase of that, obviously, with Mike Keith and whoever he brings on as his analyst for Tennessee men's basketball. So they're going to look and sound pretty different next year. Rick Barnes' squad. It'll be interesting to see all the moves that they make over the course of the next few weeks and months. There is some very interesting news in the world of college football. Kind of an unprecedented move, I think, happening over on the West Coast with a premier ACC program. Maybe we'll have ACC Truth or Robert Walsh delve into this. Plus, owners' meetings discussions. What is the highest priority down in Palm Beach? We'll talk about it next on 104.5 The Zone. So typically, whatever's happening with Stanford football doesn't really have anybody batting an eye over here in this footprint in the state of Tennessee in the Southeastern Conference. But it did catch our eye last week. Not that Stanford fired head football coach Troy Taylor after 2, 3, and 9 seasons and amid allegations of bullying people within the program, but the person who made the call, Andrew Luck, the general manager of Stanford football. Not unusual now for college football programs to have GMs. In fact, it's becoming a lot more commonplace in this ever-changing world of NIL and the transfer portal. But what is unusual and what is unprecedented is the general manager of a college football program being the one to hire and fire coaches, being the one to put out statements about why they're making the move, about what they're looking for in the next person to lead their respective program. So Andrew Luck, obviously Stanford football legend, is straight up running that football program now. He's not just somebody in that building to help with roster management, which is the case for a lot of the guys in these roles. He is straight up running Stanford football. So we learned last week that Stanford fired Troy Taylor, and then we learned this morning that Stanford is making a hire, but not in the conventional sense. The Cardinal are hiring veteran NFL coach Frank Reich as the school's interim football coach for the 2025 season. Both sides have agreed this will be a one-season agreement, and at that point, Stanford will launch a national search. So Frank Reich, who was Andrew Luck's head coach for only one full season in Indianapolis, is now going to come work for his former quarterback as an interim coach. The contract, Robert, is reportedly 7 to 8 months. Now, this is extremely, extremely late in the game to be firing a coach, right? Most programs are right in the middle of spring practice. And I remember this being a talking point among Tennessee fans when Mike Hamilton had suddenly to make a move to replace Lane Kiffin when he bolted in late January 2010. Signing day was right around the corner, back when the February signing day actually mattered. And there was kind of this feeling, especially after the fact and with the results in hand, that maybe Tennessee should have done exactly that. Maybe they should have just, Kippy Brown was the interim in that weird in-between between Kiffin and Derek Dooley. Maybe they should have just made Kippy Brown the interim coach for that 2010 season, hit the reset button, and then launch a full search. Instead, they made a panic hire. They hired Derek Dooley. We understand what the results were there, and it, kind of snowballed into that decade plus of dysfunction for the Tennessee program. This is much later in the game than late January, so I get what Stanford is doing here, but this is not what we expected. Frank Reich coming back to coaching at the college level for ACC powerhouse Stanford football.
It does make a little bit of sense because they have a tiny bit of continuity going forward where their tight ends coach is being elevated to be their offensive coordinator. That makes me wonder if he would be the coach in waiting, and if that's the case, then why not just name him the head coach? Maybe they want to put him with a seasoned veteran head coach to kind of get him ready for that. But the timing is what makes this so hard for them, is because right now you're not going to hire any big names. No one's available that would go, wow, Stanford's going to really be on the way up this next year. So it seems like they're just hiring someone to right the ship, keep us consistent, the opposite of a Jeff Saturday hire. Someone who has a lot of experience, but experience that is relevant to the position, not someone who would just spend a lot of time in the league, spend a lot of time in college football. It's not like Florida hiring a Tim Tebow to be their interim head coach. This makes sense in that fact to me. But the waiting to fire, the having to settle for a Frank Reich, that is what is troubling for me. But again, Stanford, all ACC powerhouse now, is trying to make waves inside of an ACC that is kind of stagnant. So if you can go kind of like what Cal did this year. Cal wasn't like a supremely competitive team, but they were able to make some waves. If Stanford can do something similar to that this year, I think this is a win.
I assume Frank Reich won't call plays. I mean, remember the drama around that in Carolina, his 1 year in Carolina, where he allocated play calling duties and then he took it back. I think 3 different people called plays for the Panthers in that Frank Reich year. where he was fired by David Tepper, including Thomas Brown, who is kind of one of those fast-rising names in the world of NFL coaches on the offensive side. But, I mean, I'm with you, man. This makes sense. It is March 31st. You are not going to find the best candidate for the job on March 31st in terms of a long-term situation. It's literally impossible. So that move makes a ton of sense in the way that they're framing it. It's just interesting the person that they're bringing in to do it. Frank Reich, who has never been a head coach at the college level, who actually has never coached college football ever.
Oh, wow.
He started his career as a coaching intern with the Colts in 2007. From there, just worked his way up, was an assistant in Indy for a long time, in Arizona and San Diego, was the offensive coordinator, obviously was the OC with the Eagles under Doug Peterson before taking the Colts head coaching job in 2018. So has had zero experience coaching at the college level, and he is the interim coach for the Stanford Cardinal. Imagine telling somebody in 2018 that one of the more anticipated ACC matchups of the 2025 season will be a Frank Reich-led Stanford team facing off against a Bill Belichick-led North Carolina team.
So in the article, it notes that the tight ends coach that was promoted will be calling plays.
Okay.
So Frank Reich will not be calling plays, but he does have his work cut out for him because this news comes after David Bailey, the best Stanford transfer, goes into the portal, and they are going to try to retain him. Now, I wonder if this is strictly a financial decision or 2, 3, and 9 seasons will really get to the best of you, but They have their marching orders. They know what they're supposed to do this offseason is trying to retain the linebacker that is trying to exit to get some more money.
It's such an interesting concept what Stanford is doing with Andrew Luck running that thing right now. And I am fascinated to see how many programs kind of follow suit in that. I mean, you look here locally, Vanderbilt has a general manager in place. It's Barton Simmons. But we know Candace Story-Lee runs that athletic department. She's the one making the call on hiring and firing coaches. Tennessee does not have a general manager. They do have a large support staff. Tennessee is one of the biggest, the highest paid networks of offensive quality control, defensive quality control, analysts, roster management people. But they do not have a general manager per se, where that is their entire responsibility to aid roster management. And Danny White will never give up that duty of hiring and firing coaches. It's really where he's made his name as an athletic director at all of his stops, Buffalo, UCF, Tennessee, wherever. But, man, I mean, think about the fall that the Stanford football program has had just in the last few years, man. It has been a long that's the thing. It hasn't been a terribly long time since Stanford has been relevant, but it has been years of 3-win type of seasons. The David Shaw era kind of crashing out. It's one of those programs that has done very, very little to be able to keep up with everything that's going on.
But I can promise you one thing. If this is a success, people will be mimicking this across college football. Because if you've seen the general manager hires, it's like Jim Nagy to Oklahoma or Ron Rivera to Cal or Mike Lombardi. It's all former GMs, former scouts, former head office people, former head coaches. It has never been a former player. So if a former player can come in and do this and kind of spark the change for a brand like Stanford, you can bet that everyone else will be trying their hand at this kind of magic. Like, who can we pick out of the bunch to come and be our general manager?
Yeah, Dylan on the F&M Bank chat says the Christian McCaffrey era was the last time Stanford was really good. So, yeah, not that long ago, but it certainly feels that way. I mean, college football is certainly in a different era from that point in time.
We say not that long ago. When was Christian drafted? It was over 10 years ago, wasn't it?
Was he
when
16? I don't think he's been in the league. I mean, you might be right. He was 2017 draft pick.
Okay, so 8 years. Coming up on 8 years.
Number 8 overall pick. He is 28 years old.
That's a long-ass time ago, dude. I'm here to tell you that, like, we think, 26, that wasn't that long ago. Yes, it was. We're all old as hell now. We're all way too old.
Well, and also, college football has changed more since 2017 than, any 8-year period in the history of the sport. So it feels like a lot longer.
Christian McCaffrey was one of the first athletes to sit out of bowl games going into the draft. Like, so now we have almost 8 years of experience of guys being like, I think I'm going to sit out of the bowl game.
And that was a revelation at the time. McCaffrey did it. Leonard Fournette, who obviously was in that same draft class, he was 4 picks ahead of McCaffrey to Jacksonville out of LSU. I mean, those guys were some of the first to do it because prior to that, I mean, you only have to go back 3 years where Jadeveon Clowney, who was the bona fide #1 overall pick, right? The best player in that draft, 2014, I believe, Clowney was the #1 overall pick, if I'm not mistaken, who played in that Outback Bowl against Michigan. I mean, in what world now would the #1, the best player in the country, play in the Outback Bowl, right? And maybe, I say that, and Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders both played in the Alamo Bowl, were blown out by BYU, but that was such a big headline. The fact that they played, and then Cam Ward pulls out of the second half in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And so, yes, a lot has changed since then.
I wonder if expansion keeps going, we're going to start to see players where the playoffs get longer and longer. If you would start to see players of Abdul Carter's caliber saying, yeah, you know what, it's really not that important for me to play in a semifinal game for Penn State. Like, it's really not that important. I wonder if we get to that place.
I mean, we're already at the place where players are having to enter the portal, right, and find their new home. They could stick around, but they know they give themselves a better opportunity if they pull out, even if that's a painful thing to do. We saw it with Penn State's backup quarterback, Bo Pribula, who is now playing for Missouri, and that's a guy that had an impact for Penn State last year. They had packages for that guy backing up Drew Aller, and he had to pull out, didn't even get a chance to go on that run. And then there was the opposite a couple of years ago with Malik Murphy, who decided to enter the portal but stick with Texas in the playoff. It's being handled in all sorts of different ways. But, yeah, I mean, we can't sit here and say that that's just not a possibility, right? Players of that caliber who are being told they are going to be top 3 picks pulling out of a college football playoff semifinal. It's hard to fathom, but to act like it's just something that is in the stratosphere as something that'll never happen in the sport, at this point, I'd be hard-pressed to say that that's just an impossible thing. All right, owners' meetings going on in Palm Beach. There's all sorts of discussions taking place, including the Tush Push. Will the Tush Push end up being banned this week when owners vote on it on Tuesday morning? We'll talk about it coming up next on 104.5 The Zone. 11:02, good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. The Final Four is set in stone in the NCAA tournament. Tennessee's season came to an end with a 69-50 loss to Houston on Sunday. The Vols only scoring 15 points in the first half, shooting less than 29% from the floor on the day, and their season ends with a 30-8 record in a second straight Elite Eight appearance. So Houston moves on. They'll play Duke in the Final Four. On the other side, Auburn and Florida play for a spot in the national championship this weekend. The Final Four made up of all one seeds for the first time since 2008. NFL owners' meetings are underway this week in Palm Beach. One of the most contentious items on the docket is the Tush push. Owners will vote on the proposal to ban the play tomorrow morning. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone. So as the Elite Eight becomes the Final Four in the NCAA tournament, NFL owners' meetings underway. The Titans are talking about the number 1 overall pick with reporters. There is much to discuss with you until 1 o'clock. Lucas Panzica and Robert Walsh holding it down through Wednesday when, unfortunately, Buck will be back here on Thursday. We will hear from him coming up at 11:20. Checking in from owners' meetings in Palm Beach on what the scuttlebutt is right now around one of the more contentious items down there, the Tush push, a proposal by the Green Bay Packers to ban the play will be voted on tomorrow morning by NFL owners.
What if we just didn't talk to him? Because, he's tweeting everything he knows anyway. I don't feel like we have to talk to Buck. You know what I mean? What if we put him on hold and just stay with me here? We got him in the Zoom, and we put him there, and then as we were going to him, it was the end of the segment, and you asked him a question, and then we just throw it to break right over him. That's what I'm thinking.
Let the sweeper run him over?
Yeah, I would prefer if we set him up for some, big grandeur definition of, why are the Titans saying that they're going to trade the number 1 pick, and then we just run him over with something. I would love to crush his ego because, he's up there rubbing elbows with all these people, which, by the way, nobody used to go to this owners meeting. It used to be like Teron Davenport getting all of the juicy nuggets, and now all of a sudden, everybody and their mama wants to go to Palm Beach. Who would have thought that we could get great access and then also just hang out on the beach all day and call it a work day? So all I'm saying is I need his ego to be brought down a little bit. He's been going to places that have bars, aquariums inside of the bars. I'm very jealous. It hurts my feelings. Why doesn't he bring us with him for any of these things? That's why I need to hurt him.
I know you love a good aquarium.
Oh, God, do I ever. I would pay a stupid amount of money to go to an aquarium bar.
I was happy to let Buck waltz down to owners' meetings. We get a nice little respite from him. But you're right. It is cool now to go to owners' meetings. And Buck will only go do stuff when he recognizes that everybody else is doing it. And it gives him a great opportunity to clout chase. Maybe we'll just play him off at some point with the music when he says something that he believes is important. We'll play it by ear. By the way, coming up at 4 o'clock today, speaking of March Madness, Jim Nantz, friend of 3HL, will be on 3HL right at 4 o'clock. Houston alum Jim Nantz, who was on hand to watch the Cougars knock off the Vols in the Elite Eight. So be sure to check that out on 104.5 The Zone TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. And, of course, the 104.5 The Zone app works as well if you are away from your car or away from a radio. All right, so the Tush push. It is taking up the majority of the conversation down in Palm Beach. And there's a lot going on down there. They're discussing potential changes to playoff seeding. They're discussing overtime rules, a potential 18th game in the NFL regular season, the promotion of flag football, flex scheduling for Thursday night football. There's a lot on the docket, but I don't think any of those things will spark as much debate as the Tush push. So the proposal by the Green Bay Packers was to ban the play. And there's this reporting by ESPN just late last night from West Palm Beach stating the Green Bay Packers proposal to ban the Tush push has support within the competition committee. A source with direct knowledge told ESPN on Sunday. Another source with direct knowledge of the competition committee said the proposal would be, quote, hotly contested among coaches, general managers, and owners as they gather for league meetings this week. We put it to a poll. At Lucas Panzica is where you can go vote. Should the tush push be banned? So far, 60% of the audience says no. Where are you on this? People seem to be very, very strongly opinionated one way or the other on the tush push. It is such an interesting thing because it so directly benefits one team. One team uses this play to perfection. The Philadelphia Eagles have the offensive line built for it. They've got the quarterback built for it. We've seen other teams try versions of the tush push. None run it with the level of success that the Eagles do. So it makes for a very interesting debate, and I'm just imagining Howie Roseman and Eagles brass just kind of sitting there in the middle of the room as NFL owners are yelling at each other about it, and bullets are flying in the room, and all this debate is being sparked. Where are you on this? Should the tush push be banned in the NFL?
There's two schools of thought, right? It's either let the boys play or this could potentially hurt somebody. Somebody might be able to get hurt doing this. I am in the school of let the boys play. The only people that are upset about this play are people that can also not run it. Like, if any of the people that are on the side of it, even though Nick Sirianni did have a very mobster quote when talking about this over the weekend, I'll share that in a second. You're either saying, like, oh, I don't want people to get hurt, which is just super whiny. You're playing that is the modern-day gladiators, and you're worried about people getting hurt. People are going to get hurt no matter what. I'm not worried about the tush push get hurting someone. But Nick Sirianni over the weekend was like, I know I should have at least 4 votes. Shane Steichen, whoever the Cardinals coach is, he names like 4 coaches who had worked underneath him.
So Jonathan Gannon, Shane Steichen, Gannon the coach of the Cardinals, Steichen the coach of the Colts, obviously, and now Kellen Moore is the head coach of the Saints.
He was like, yeah, all of those guys got hired because we were so good at it, so they better not vote to ban it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we get it, buddy. All right, that's fine. But don't you think I might have gotten hired because of the merit of my own work, not necessarily because of one tush push? No, it was all because of that play, so they better not vote it out.
615-737-1045 for you to jump in. Here's the quote from Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni. We'll see how it goes. All I will say about it is Gannon, Steichen, and Moore better vote for it. They are in the position right now because of that play. So all 3, I better have those 3 votes right there and the Eagles vote. I at least know that we have 4. So, yeah, Nick Sirianni counting on the votes of all of his proteges that have gone on to take head coaching jobs. Here's my thing on it. If you can't pull a teammate, why can you push a teammate? I generally don't have a huge problem with the play. Like, I don't get upset when I watch the play. I am also of the mind, generally, that if you don't like it, stop it and all of those things. But if we're looking for consistency, you can't pull your teammate across the goal line, right? You cannot drag his body across the goal line. So why should you be able to push and create that leverage from behind? They're going to talk about player safety. Everybody who wants to ban it can talk about player safety. The NFL can talk about player safety. But as long as we're still talking about an 18th game, about sending players to Australia to play 15-hour flights to Australia to play regular season games, I don't even want to hear about player safety being an issue. Player safety is not in the minds of the NFL with this stuff. But if you can't pull a player, why can you push a player?
And this may be dumb, but this is my opinion on why you can do that. Pulling someone is a lot less controlled, right? If you're pushing someone, you have to use your energy to go in a direction that you can see, and you're pushing them in the ass so they can also see that direction. If you're pulling someone, you cannot see the direction that you're pulling. And you can also throw. I feel like it would be a lot more dangerous to pull someone rather than to push someone. That would be my uneducated opinion, but more educated people might have a better opinion. So that's just how I see it.
We'll see. I don't know where it's really trending right now, to be honest. Again, the reporting from ESPN is just that it has support, the proposal to ban the sneak, again, submitted by the Packers. It has support within the competition committee, but it will be hotly contested among coaches, GMs, and owners. And the voting on that will happen tomorrow morning. So, there's been a few coaches to speak publicly on this, but
It kind of feels like a House of Representatives kind of
It
thing,
does.
where it's like everyone's giving quotes. Okay, let's count. Who? Do the ayes have it? Do the nays have it? That I don't care enough to dive into the numbers like that. But one thing I do care about: aquariums. Mike in Prim Springs wanted to talk to us about an aquarium. If you got time for it,
Let's do it, Mike.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Yeah, the coolest one I've ever seen. There's a historic hotel in downtown Louisville called the Galt House. And the bar itself is the aquarium. It's about 8 inches thick, and you're sitting there at the bar, and fish are swimming in the bar.
Oh, think we lost you there, Mike, but appreciate the call. An aquarium in Louisville, where the bar is the aquarium. Now we're getting questions in the F&M Bank chat directed to you, Robert. What is the best aquarium in the U.S., asks Browning.
that's tough for me. That's tough. Baltimore, I think it's called the Aquarium of America. They have a great aquarium. The aquarium in Atlanta, where both they would be my 1A, 1B as far as aquariums go.
Didn't you guys, after Slay's wedding, didn't you guys go to the aquarium in on the West Coast?
Yeah, no, that was also awesome. And okay, so the cool thing about there was it wasn't all just like, when you walk in, it's usually like tubes of water around you. Oh, look at the shark swimming above me. This one also had a land zoo attached to it, and in one of the areas there were these parakeets. They would hand you these tiny little plastic saucers of seeds, and if you held them, the birds would come land on your fingers, your shoulders. Buck would not do it. He was terrified that one of these birds was going to poop on him. So I could not convince Buck to go in. I went in, and I got bird poop on me instead. But
just all over you.
Also, it's like, oh, where's this white stuff? It was an incredible aquarium. Had a great time over there as well.
He just walked out just covered in it. Oh, you should have come. It was a good time.
It was a great time. You should have tried it.
Well, Buck is down in West Palm Beach. The Tush Push is being discussed, but so is the #1 overall pick. And Brian Callahan was surrounded by reporters down there this morning. A Breakfast with Brian Palm Beach edition down at NFL owners meeting. So Buck begrudgingly will hop in coming up next to talk about his takeaways from his chat with the Titans head coach. That's next on 104.5 The Zone.
If you are dealing with ED, there's no reason to freak out about it. That is a natural thing that happens to guys as you age. Your body starts to change, and you just want to make sure that you have the right support system in place, because maybe you've gone online and taken some pills and the pills were effective for a period of time, but that's not an effective way to continue to treat the problem for you as an individual. There's a lot of misconceptions out there about getting ED treatment, and the Tennessee Men's Clinic is there to debunk those for you. Lots of men assume that if the pills stop working, they have no other options than to seek out treatments like irreversible surgery. Do not go through extremes before you've talked to the experts at the Tennessee Men's Clinic, because they specialize in men's sexual health issues. It's all they do, and it makes them the experts in the field. They have access to multiple protocols and options to treat ED based on your specific needs and what's going on in your body. So don't trust your health to an online pharmacy, and don't feel like you're out of options. We want you to understand all the options that you have available for you, because the Tennessee Men's Clinic is there with protocols that are patient-centered and customized to your needs. They have treatments for everything from low testosterone, ED, treatments that increase size, stamina, and everything else in between. So schedule an appointment online today at TennesseeMen'sClinic.com for their Franklin or Midtown location, or call them 615-208-9090.
We've got the trucks, all the trims, all the towing, all the bells and whistles, and all at Truck Month Savings. Two Rivers Ford is Ford Truck Central.
You're overpaying for your health and wellness products?
With over 20 company-owned brands offering its members vitamins, supplements, wellness, and skincare products, you're able to save up to 70% off retail.
Members Nutrition can't change your life, but we can change the way you live.
NFL owners meetings going on down in Palm Beach. A lot of discussion around rule changes, proposals being voted on, the number one overall pick with the Titans, London games. And we go to Buck Rising because I thought he was going to have something to say, something to provide, but he's just sitting on the beach, and I don't know that he's even been doing anything this morning down in Palm Beach. I don't see Buck yet, as we are on 104.5 The Zone TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch, but I'm told by Robert that he looks like, cosplaying as an A-lister or something, sitting on the beach in Monaco? Like, how would you describe Buck's look right now as he chimes in on Zoom from the beach?
I fully expected Buck to tune in with like the lifeguard sunscreen on his nose and his glasses on, no shirt, just showing us that true math fitness body he has. But no, he just looks like a schlub in a button-up shirt, not even that tan, not even that chiseled. He doesn't even look that good. Buck, what's going on?
You're dumb because this shirt does not have buttons. I look phenomenal, and I'm doing better than either you two schlubs who are hanging out back there in stormy, miserable Nashville. It's beautiful down here at the beautiful, beautiful Breakers Hotel, boys. How we living?
We are running this thing into the ground. You will not have a show when you come back. My door's locked. Robert's door's locked. The authorities, management has been trying to get in here since we started this thing at 10 o'clock, but we are going to make sure that you do not have a show to come back to. That's how bad we're going to destroy this thing for 3 days.
How many of the regular segments have you already done? You've been on the air for, an hour and a half? How many of the Friday fires on a Monday? How many of the dumbest thing in sports this week? How many of them did you do in the first hour? Be honest with me.
Oh, Buck, ye of little faith. You think that we would waste doing that on a Monday when there's all of the weekend to react to? No. That's a Tuesday thing. That's a Wednesday thing. That's when the well runs dry so we can take and squeeze every bit of juice out of this show for when you come back Thursday. So maybe Tuesday we'll have the dumbest thing in sports, the oh no, the Friday fires, but not today.
Yeah, we do have a lot there's heartbreak to talk about. There's owners meetings to talk about. There's Frank Reich coaching college football to talk about. So today's a breeze.
That's probably been the worst part of my trip down to South Florida is your awful basketball team. What the hell was that? I know that's not really what we're here to spend time on, but what was it, 0 for 17 in the first half from 3?
Started 0 for 14. I know your awful basketball team has taken up enough air on this show that we don't need to talk about a team that's made 2 straight Elite
won
Eights.
As many championships with their awful basketball team as your awful basketball team won this year.
Did Buck say something?
No, I have him muted temporarily.
He's breaking up. All right. Shut up about the basketball team and tell us what you learned from Brian Callahan this morning.
They're not telling us who they're going to pick, even though we all know who they're going to pick, and all the different conversations around not just them, with them this morning. And we're going to have Mike Borgonzi on the radio show probably. I mean, I don't know. You want to do that tomorrow? I'm going to roll that today at 3:30. At 3:30 our time, so I guess we could do that tomorrow if you guys needed more. If I could make your lives more easy from Palm Beach, I suppose I could do that. But the entire conversation around the NFL owners meetings is, of course, the tush push. But first and foremost, it's like we all know you're taking a quarterback out of Coral Gables. So how are you going to try and tell us otherwise? And they have done so in so many words, and they're trying to keep the worst kept secret in the league as secret as humanly possible for as long as they can. But it was mostly a conversation about the quarterback evaluation. And really, all we talked to Callahan this morning about was Cam Ward. I mean, there was brief mention of Shedeur Sanders, and I know he and Chad Brinker are going to be in attendance at the private workout as opposed to the full-on situation. Deion's not calling it a pro day. He's calling it a showcase, from my understanding, and it's going to be quite a spectacular from all I hear about.
I'm imagining like Lil Wayne performing or something.
Hey, you know what? I don't
During the
think it's out
drills.
of the realm of possibility. I think all things are on the table when it comes to Coach Prime, which it should be. It's going to be a showcase, and they're going to showcase a lot of things beyond just Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, though that's what we all care about. But I mean, I don't even think I heard the name Abdul Carter down here. The Patriots are trying to talk about it at 4 all week long. They're just praying and hoping and wishing that arguably the best player of the draft drops to number 4 because the first 3 need a quarterback. And even Cleveland seems kind of resigned down here based on everybody that you talk to, the fact that, there's not really anything we're going to be able to do here to get Tennessee to budge so far, right? So we still have some time to go before this thing actually goes down. But it's pretty turnkey. Take the quarterback, keep it moving.
Speaking of New England, you're down there with your old pal Vrabel, and I saw a news nugget from them that I thought was interesting. They were asking him about draft tackle Will Campbell and his arm length, and Vrabel said vehemently, he is a left tackle. Watch the tape. He is a left tackle. I know Peter Skoronski's here like, why didn't he say that about me, man? How come he didn't think I could play tackle? Come on. Have you gotten to speak to Vrabel? How was he? Was he complimentary of your outfit? Did he make fun of you for being a little pudgy?
I noticed he doesn't have the mustache, by the way. He quickly grew that beard back so Vrabel wouldn't call him out on trying to cosplay as Vrabel.
You know what? I've had more awkward interactions with Patriots and Titans people this week, being in the same rooms as one another and, peeing at urinals next to each other. That's created quite a commotion down here, which has been delightful. But I mean, Will Campbell, Bert, I know you're a draft nut on this, and I would not dare to venture into your area of expertise, but is Will Campbell not a significantly better tackle than he ever was? I mean, I understand that.
Oh, he sounds terrible.
My goodness.
Oh, God, listen to this guy.
Bad.
Can't even have a good connection on the beach. Who does he think he is?
Sounds like an amateur down in West Palm Beach. My goodness.
Come on. He's even frozen on the screen. I kind of like him like that. Look at his dumb little face frozen on the screen. Nothing you can. Oh, now he's back. Okay, what were you saying, Buck? Sorry, we weren't saying anything mean about you.
Shut up.
Go on.
Well, I don't know if are we good? Am I going to be able to keep doing this?
Oh, God, now he's doing it again. Yeah, I'm just kidding. You sound great. Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, very good. Is Will Campbell not a significantly better tackle than Peter Skoronski was in college?
I would agree with that, yes. I would say that his tape shows that he can play it. He's one of those guys that you would let him play it and then fail before you move him to guard to be like, yeah, that guy's definitely a guard.
So tell me what the hell else they're supposed to do at left tackle. Like, I know that the tackle situation in Tennessee was awful, but the Patriots have an equally as bad offensive line.
They do, and that's the big question where I know everyone over there's fingers are crossed praying that Abdul Carter falls to 4. Spoiler alert, he will not. That is the big question. Do you take the top tackle in the draft, Will Campbell, at 4, or do you wait until the second round to try to grab one of these guys who may be a less farther along in their development? That is the conundrum if you are the Patriots.
So to answer your question about Vrabes cosplay and all this other stuff, yeah, he was on my flight down here. He kept bothering me about how hungover I looked trying to sleep on the plane. There's a lot of NFL coaches on my flight. I don't know if everybody just connecting through Nashville or what the deal was, but yeah, we've had plenty of Vrabes.
So Brian Callahan, Mike Borgonzi, Titans brass continue to say no decision has been made on the number 1 overall pick. Brian Callahan said, they're about 2 weeks out from coming to a final conclusion after they go through all the touch points, as Mike Borgonzi labeled them. You mentioned the showcase/pro day coming up for Colorado. They continue to say that there is no decision on the number 1 pick. You started this segment by saying, pretty turnkey. You take Cam Ward, you move on. I mean, at some point, do we need to believe them when they say there is no clear-cut 100% decision on the number 1 pick, where that's where you've been coming from the last few weeks, that if it was bona fide 100% Cam Ward, we'd probably know that by now, and that's not exactly what all the reporting has been around this thing.
Which is fair, but they also have the league. There's pressure from the league to not spoil the beginning of their multi-million-dollar television show that'll be broadcasting from the Mecca of football at Lambeau Field. And like Lucas, if you're telling me that you need 2 more additional weeks when we're already this far along in the process to make your decision, in the decision already made. I get what he's saying there, and that's the tack that you have to take in that particular situation. But 2 weeks changes nothing. Unless Cam Ward gets hurt, God forbid, working out or something like that, 2 weeks, there's nothing different about 2 weeks from now than there is right now. The only thing that's different is that we have to wait longer.
Well, it covers all of those touch points, right? 2 weeks from now, you will have done everything, all of the pro days, 30 visits, private workouts. So I don't know if they're just kind of playing those hits, and that was the uniform messaging from the jump, that we're not going to act like we're committed to anything until all of those steps are done and in the rear view. Or if they are internally saying, okay, we know Cam's the guy, but we're going to keep messaging this way. Because, I don't know, there's all these Easter eggs, right? We're going to play the audio in a little bit about Myles Garrett talking to a local radio station in Cleveland about a young quarterback, and all these hints about what Cleveland's plan is at the quarterback position, how they're letting him in on it. And you just yet to have this slam dunk feeling, whether it's Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport stepping up on TV to say Titans are taking Cam Ward, book it with the number 1 pick. At every turn, those guys also are saying, hey, look, they're still exploring all options.
Well, that's because the Titans haven't given the agents anything definitive. And, that's where the messaging typically comes from. And, not the source guess or whatever, but that's how these things typically play out. And I think that's been key. Also, I don't think Brian Callahan matters in all of this, but not when it comes to the trade discussion, because I asked him straight up today, Lucas, how actively are you involved in the offers that are out there, or that may have been posed, and how much are Mike and Chad kind of keeping you in the loop on all that stuff? And his answer to that effect was, not really. I mean, that's not really my purview. So I just kind of go about doing my job, or my part of the job. And, if there's anything super concrete, I'm sure they'd bring it to me. But he was pretty candid about the fact that he's not really involved in these trade discussions. And like I said, I'm going to have Borgonzi here in about 3 hours. So perhaps we can suss some more information out from there. I'm sure they'll stick to the company line, but as far as Callahan goes, that's not his bag.
And we'll play some audio from Brian Callahan to that effect coming up next. Other than the number 1 pick stuff and the draft discussion, what else did you take away from the chat with Callahan?
They are going to try to make this Bryce Oliver thing work at wide receiver, which I think is pretty curious, obviously, with the room looking the way that it does and the draft still going on. He was asked specifically about can Bryce Oliver, the former UDFA out of Youngstown State, can he kind of take that next step to fill the void that Nick Westbrook-Akina had done so dutifully and shouldered so well? And Callahan, kind of hesitated at the idea of saying, well, he can definitely do that at this point in time because they haven't, practice hasn't begun. There's no OTAs. There's no voluntary stuff just yet. So you want to couch it, but they feel very confident about it. He said there's no doubt, or he said they definitely expect L'Jarius Sneed at training camp, which was no sure thing given how weird that injury was for him last year. I've never heard of a quad strain requiring a bone marrow injection, but that was the case for the Titans' top acquisition at corner. And then, of course, Treylon Burks not expected to be ready for training camp. So your depth at wide receiver for those people who are still even willing to have the conversation about the former 2022 first-round pick being involved in their wide receiver room. I mean, that ACL tear in practice, or it wasn't a full tear. It was a non-contact ACL injury that they ended up just doing the surgery anyway. That was in December, late November.
Yeah.
So it could well be into the season before there's any sign of life from Traylon Burks if people who are still looking for a pulse from that are in it. But at the crux of it, their biggest thing is, can we get healthy and can we get average quarterback play? Because they don't believe, and they've been consistent on this, they don't believe they're nearly as far away as the rest of us make it feel. And I grant them some of that grace, and you understand how that could be the case given the quarterback play that they got and the injuries that they sustained, specifically to the high-priced players that they brought in or traded for last year. But they're keeping expectations relatively low, which is the exact opposite of the approach that they took last year.
I mean, to be honest, I feel like a lot of people probably forgot Traylon Burks even had that ACL injury, right? Just a non-factor down the stretch there, but that has been the case oftentimes, whether he's injured or not. So I wonder how many people driving around right now hear you say that, Buck, and say, oh, what, Traylon Burks had an ACL injury at the end of the year?
Yeah, because it didn't happen in a game, right? Nope, they didn't see it.
Yeah, they were out of contention at that point.
Yeah, and that's the last thing you were thinking about if you're a Titans fan, what Traylon Burks was or was not giving you at the time. But beyond that, there's some interesting conversations about the Super Bowl in 2029 relative to Nashville and Nashville's continued efforts to kind of stave off Vegas for the first year that the new Nissan Stadium would be eligible. The international games meetings took place about an hour ago. Saw a lot of the ownership groups walking out of there, talk about playing games in the UAW, not just going to Australia in 2026 and things of that nature. They're trying to find ways to further the horizons. And there is a legitimate belief that they are going to have a team playing an international game in some form or fashion every year, right? Like one team is going to have to go abroad every year, or these teams are going to have to go abroad for one game every year, and it's going, or at least it's trending in that direction, which is kind of their goal for global domination, or at least global media rights domination.
I cannot wait to see the data on how flying 15 hours in Week 7 actually helps with player safety. Okay,
they don't care. They like the money.
No, I know, but I love that they pretend to care. So the Tush push obviously is going to take up most of the oxygen in terms of what's going to be voted on, and that's happening tomorrow morning. What is the second most important thing, most contentious thing that will be voted on this week?
That's a good question. People really, it's taken up so much oxygen here about the Tush push, but I really do think, Lucas, it goes back to the player safety conversation about the international games. Australia is crazy. I think they're sending the Rams over there in 2026 right now, and that's really the thing that clubs are pushing back on, while their ownerships groups are looking around and be like, hey, guys, it's good for business and everybody could make a lot more money. And don't you like money more than you like being healthy and safe and well-rested and, with your families and these different things? Can't we just stuff your mouths full of a little bit more money to make that worth your while? That seems to be the thing that's caught up in the air most, because the league is pushing the holy hell out of it. And, teams, personnel-wise, not ownership, they are the ones with representation in the room who are fighting that the hardest. But I talked to an NFC executive about the Tush push stuff last night, and he said it's way more contested or hotly contested than they expected it to be. I think kind of going in, they assumed that, they were going to have enough forward momentum to kind of do away with it and level the playing field. But that doesn't seem to be the case. So one of the more controversial plays in football, which is a bit silly to me, seems to be, holding its own for now.
Buck checking in from West Palm Beach. Are you at least having a good time? Are you and Grace getting to do vacation things? Like, what have y'all been doing other than, hanging around and asking Brian Callahan questions?
She's at the pool today. I'm going to run back and go to the pool after this before I go interview Borgonzi and take some time.
All right. That is not necessarily 60 seconds on that answer, but we're up against it here. Buck should know better. He hosts this show every day. It is 11:39, which means it's time to go. So very selfish of him to continue to take up that oxygen. We expect nothing less. It's okay. We'll check in with him tomorrow after he chats with Titans GM Mike Borgonzi. Thanks to Buck for checking in on his pseudo work trip / vacation. We will hear from Titans coach Brian Callahan and what he had to say on the number 1 overall pick coming up next on 104.5 The Zone. All right. Thanks to Buck for checking in from his work vacation. Hope Grace is having a good time. I will say that.
That's the only thing that really matters. As long as Grace is getting to enjoy herself.
Yes. Well, and she has it pretty good this week, honestly, because she gets time, to just go hang out down there, and he will scurry off and do his clout chasing excursion at owners' meetings, and she just gets to hang out without Buck because he's often, trying to take you away from fun things, right? Oh, let's get in the water. No, I don't want to get wet. You want me to get wet? Let's go on the beach. I don't want to get sand on my feet. Are you crazy? You know what I mean? So I'm hoping Grace is having a nice vacation.
The art museum looked nice.
Obviously, we talked about it off the top of the show. By the way, Tennessee crashing out in the Elite Eight against Houston. Big development for one Joseph Bonanno and the attendance at his wedding on Saturday.
Woo!
Joseph
hope you're ready for the increased amount of beers that we'll be drinking. You're drinking?
I mean, we were having discussions about that because we'll be there very excited.
There was not we. You were discussing.
I was.
I was going to go to the wedding no matter what because I'm a good person. If I tell somebody and give my word, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there. Lucas, on the other hand, if the Vols make the Final Four, I don't know if I'm going to make it to
I'm
that
just
wedding.
saying there was a discussion to be had. Now, the Vols would have been tipping off at 7:50. Instead, that's when Houston will be playing Duke in the Final Four Saturday. So there would have been time to go and, hear the toasts and have dinner and hang out for a bit and then scurry off somewhere to watch the game. But I at least was talking to Ramon about it, what do we do here if Tennessee wins this game? But didn't happen.
I was kind of looking forward to just me and Dawn drinking all of the open bar beers. That was what I was excited for. But now that you and Ramon will be there, I guess I can look forward to that.
No, it's going to be a great time. Ramon and his lovely wife, Keisha, Dawn and her husband, Travis.
Oh, Travis.
Yeah.
Oh, excited about the wedding.
I'm very excited. And watching Joseph marry his lovely fiancée, Alyssa. Looking forward to that on Saturday. So down in Palm Beach, Brian Callahan was surrounded just a mob of reporters around the Titans head coach as he discussed the number 1 overall pick, a Breakfast with Brian, South Florida edition. And we can begin here with the idea of a leader in the clubhouse as Brian Callahan spoke for about 30 or so seconds about the number 1 overall pick and whether or not there is somebody that is separated from the pack.
I think it's maybe I would be wrong to say there's a leader in the clubhouse at this point. We're still going through all the process, and we got meetings coming up still that we have to finish. When it comes to the Colorado players, both Travis and Shador, their pro day and then their private workout. So we're just looking for those guys to perform, and that's all we're looking for. There's nothing that they need to do or not do. We want them to just perform as best they can, and we'll do our evaluation part of it.
So, a common question for the Titans right now, as you heard there from Brian Callahan, you've heard at every turn, right, that they're going to go through all the touch points. They're going to go through the process. They're going to keep all of their options open. And okay, that's what you say when you have the number 1 overall pick. But I do think it's interesting, Robert, that there's not a single, we talked about this with Buck, there's not a single NFL insider that is stepping up and saying, guys, Titans are taking Cam Ward. Okay, every single time, whether it's Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, whoever, there is just that little caveat or little asterisk of, it's likely, but, and Buck said, that's what the Titans are communicating. Okay, fair enough. But still, doesn't it feel like it's about this point in the process when it is as clear-cut as number 1 team, number 1 pick, I should say, will be the best quarterback to the team with the number 1 pick? Usually we feel pretty secure about it. And the fact that there's any discussion that indicates anything other than drafting Cam Ward, I suppose could mean that the Titans actually are keeping options open and they're not 100% bought in on Cam Ward, or it could mean that they're communicating and they're messaging exactly what they want everybody to believe.
And that's kind of where I sit at. Like, having the waters be muddied by saying, we're still in the process, still leaves you open to the possibility that someone would pay you a king's ransom for number 1. And to me, that seems like the only position that would pivot them off of Cam Ward is if they weren't selecting at number 1. It's pretty well known who they would take at 1. Like, there's not a lot of pad footing around about, they might take Abdul, they might take Travis Hunter. No, it's probably Cam Ward or they're going to trade the pick. And I still think leaning it's going to be Cam Ward, but the reason of not having a specific, we're definitely taking this cat, is so we can have the position of someone might say, dadgummit, I'll pay what you want. I'll pay it. I'll pay those 3 first-round picks, which would be nice. But that's the equation. Are you willing to accept that, or are you just trying to bait someone into paying that much?
But my issue there is, if you are as convicted about Cam Ward as I feel like you need to be to draft him with the number 1 pick, I get wanting to keep your options open, but should it be a red flag of sorts at all for Titans fans to hear that and think that, no, they could like Cam Ward, but they're also open to moving out for the right offer? Whereas if you are fully bought in on this guy and he's your franchise quarterback, then you're going all in on it no matter what, right? Regardless of what kind of haul you can get out. How many draft picks are worth more than getting your franchise quarterback?
I think in other years that would be true, but no one is confusing Cam Ward with the hype that Caleb Williams had last year. There was no doubt who the Bears were selecting at number 1. Same thing with Joe Burrow. Pretty much the same thing with Kyler Murray, outside the worry that he would go to the major leagues and just skip football altogether. Anytime there has been a no doubt, believe it quarterback, we have known he is going number 1. The Cam Ward stuff has not started until about a month and a half ago. Since before the Combine, since before the Senior Bowl. Before then, we were still like, oh, generational talent, Abdul Carter. That's why I believe there is pause, because there is not the conviction, hey, this guy is a generational quarterback, or this guy is a franchise quarterback, rather. If you would have thought that, you would have probably thought that since December. You would have thought that since the draft layout was there. The fact that they didn't know that doesn't cause me any pause. It just means that he is not the same caliber of quarterback that Joe Burrow was, that Caleb Williams was thought to be coming out of the draft. They just don't know that yet. He's not the same kind of guy that those guys are. And that's okay. That's okay. Those guys can still turn out to be great picks. Like Justin Herbert, he wasn't widely thought to be the number 1 quarterback in that draft. But look, you could probably argue outside of Joe Burrow, he was the best, the most qualified to be a franchise quarterback.
So here's Titans head coach Brian Callahan on exactly that question. Why won't the Titans just come out and make it clear they're drafting Cam Ward at the number 1 pick?
Yeah, I get where that sentiment would come from. But I'll just say this, again, like the one thing that Mike has preached this whole process is that we're going to go through it. And that means making sure we're doing our due diligence on all the players available, all the options available. I think that's the right way to go about it, is to make sure you're doing the right things by every player that's there for you and looking at all the options. And then when you make the decision and the decision's been made, then you move forward. But I think anytime that you just sit and you just pretend like there's nothing else out there, I don't think that's a disciplined approach. I don't think that you get a chance to look at the totality of the class. And so I just think there's a part of doing the job the right way, and I think that's our approach. And again, once we make the decision, no matter what it is or who it is, we'll be thrilled to death. But I think the right thing to do is to do it the way we're doing it and make sure that you turn over all the rocks and you go through all the things you have to go through until you get to that point.
So there you go. That's Titans head coach Brian Callahan. Jim Wyatt of TennesseeTitans.com is also down in Palm Beach, and he sat down with Titans president of football operations, Chad Brinker, for an article that you can read on TennesseeTitans.com. And here is the quote from Brinker on when the Titans will arrive at a conclusion. Quote, "We're going to go through the whole thing, and I think probably here in 2 weeks we're going to have a good idea of where things are headed. Now, we're not going to go out there and tell everybody, of course, and there's a chance a team calls and it makes you stop for a second and think, hey, we might need to consider this. But all of this is a part of being disciplined and being thorough." He was also asked about Cam Ward and getting to work with him, both with a private workout and at his pro day. Brinker said, quote, "It was good to communicate with him, see how he communicates, and get an even better feel for what it's like to coach this player. I think everybody was very impressed with how he threw the football. He has a rapid release, a really fast release, quickness, the ball spin rate. That ball comes out with zip, and he is accurate. He has a lot of tools to work with. He is going to be a good prospect." So everything still points to the Titans drafting Cam Ward with the number 1 overall pick. And I will say they have been, if anything, consistent with their messaging on this from top to bottom. I mean, even as the tea leaves form to show us the direction of drafting Cam Ward number 1 overall, whether that's the Brandon Allen signing or what have you, the offensive line moves. At every turn, they have had the exact same company line that we're going to go through this process at every touch point and keep our options wide open. Brinker even putting a 2-week timeline on it from right now as to when he thinks the Titans will have a firm grip on what they're doing. Jaron
Lockridge in the F&M Bank chat brings up a good point. You got to say it's impressive that this new regime has no leaks and the lack of information out there. There are 2 worlds you can live in, at least in this scenario. There's a bunch of them you could live in. But from my opinion, one, the people that would leak things don't know. So like the area scouts, the lower people on the totem pole who would leak information, who would have ties to insiders, do not know anything. So Brinker, Borgonzi, Callahan, all those guys know, and they're not letting anyone know. Or this is a new regime where Borgonzi in charge, and a lot of these guys aren't his people. So people are worried, hey, if I leak this out, or hey, if I give somebody a tidbit, they're going to find out. They're going to release me. So a lot of people who are working in this that are holdovers from the Rand Carthon administration, or even the older administration, are saying like, I got to worry about my job. I don't want to get some stuff leaked out there. So those are the two worlds that I'm living in currently of why this is not getting out there. Either one is good news for the Titans. It's working perfectly in their favor.
Yeah, they have certainly been tight-lipped on this the whole way. You're right about that. There was more from Titans brass talking to Jim Wyatt of TennesseeTitans.com in regards to the quarterback position, but specifically about Will Levis. Chad Brinker had something to say about the reports that the Titans are looking to shop Will Levis in a potential trade. We'll tell you what that is coming up next on 104.5 The Zone.
Will I have enough money when I retire? When should I draw from Social Security? If these questions are keeping you up at night, let me introduce you to the team that's there to keep you on the right track and guide you through it. That's Trajan Wealth, Trajan Wealth, not just any financial firm. They're your partners in securing your financial future, and we all know how important that is. They are more than just a fiduciary firm at Trajan Wealth. They're a family-owned, veteran-led team that puts your needs first. Let their decades of experience specializing in retirement planning and wealth management work for you. Trajan Wealth offers free consultations to help you develop your plan and your peace of mind. So call them today at 615-270-5000. That's 615-270-5000, or visit them online at TrajanWealth.com. Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. This is a paid advertisement.
12:02, good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. The Final Four is set in the men's NCAA tournament. Tennessee's season came to an end with a 69-50 loss to Houston on Sunday. The Vols struggling to score only 15 first-half points, and Houston moves on to face Duke in the Final Four. Tennessee's season ends with a 30-8 record in a second straight Elite Eight appearance. Houston will play Duke. Auburn will play Florida, and the Final Four is made up of all one seeds for the first time since 2008. NFL owners' meetings are underway this week in Palm Beach. One of the most contentious items on the docket is the Tush push. Owners will vote on the proposal to ban the play tomorrow morning. And the Nashville Predators are at the Philadelphia Flyers tonight. Puck drop is at 6 p.m. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone. Hour 3, wrapping things up until 1 o'clock on a Monday as NFL owners' meetings are in full swing down in Palm Beach. And there are a lot of quotes coming out from Titans brass, whether it's Chad Brinker, Mike Borgonzi, Brian Callahan, who all met with Jim Wyatt of TennesseeTitans.com. Brian Callahan did a sit-down this morning with the reporters down there. Buck will be talking to Mike Borgonzi coming up in a couple of hours. We'll hear a lot more from that conversation tomorrow. But this popped up over the weekend from Jim Wyatt on Sunday afternoon, right before Tennessee tipped off against Houston in the Elite Eight. This article on TennesseeTitans.com from NFL owners' meetings. Jim Wyatt writes, the Titans have not discussed trading quarterback Will Levis with anyone. Jim, with a short one here, he points out a few bullet points and says this much is true. Number one, the Titans are doing their homework on QB prospects in the upcoming draft, which obviously we know. Number two, the Titans have signed veteran quarterbacks Brandon Allen and Tim Boyle. Number three, the Titans were interested in re-signing Mason Rudolph, but he opted to sign with the Steelers after discussing a return to Tennessee. And then the final bullet point from Jim, the Titans have not had trade talks with anyone about quarterback Will Levis, contrary to a report earlier this month. Here's the quote from Chad Brinker. That's a false report. We have not contacted anybody, and nobody has contacted us about Will Levis. I don't think anything has changed from the time somebody asked me about this a month ago. Brinker continues, what's the plan with Will Levis? The plan is he has a chance to compete for a starting job next year, and that's like every player on our roster. It's no different for Will. I see him in our facility. He's working hard. Everybody knows he's a great kid. He's a hard worker, and he's going to continue to give it everything he has, and we are going to continue to work with Will Levis. So, this follows a report. I believe Josina Anderson, Robert, was the one who was out there saying the Titans are kind of shopping Will Levis for a potential trade. I don't think anybody else has reported anything to that effect, but we saw that report from Josina, and we didn't bat an eye. It makes sense. As soon as the Titans signed Brandon Allen, that felt like a sign that Cam Ward is going to be the number 1 overall pick to Tennessee. The Titans brought in Tim Boyle, and that just looked like another sign that Will Levis was likely on his way out. Now, Brian Callahan has said down in owners' meetings that the Titans would like to carry 3, maybe 4 quarterbacks into training camp. So, theoretically, the Titans could hang on to Tim Boyle, Brandon Allen, and Will Levis, draft Cam Ward, and take all 4 into training camp. And you could still at some point trade Will Levis, see if you can get a pick out of the former second-rounder, put Tim Boyle on your practice squad, have Brandon Allen be the backup to starter Cam Ward after he is selected with the number 1 pick. But do you believe the Titans' messaging when they say they're going to let Will Levis compete at every turn, not just for a backup spot, but to start for the Tennessee Titans? 615-737-1045. You can jump in on 1045 The Zone TV, the F&M Bank chat, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch.
Because believe me, I tried to poke holes in him saying no one has contacted us about Will Levis, and we have also not contacted anyone. I'm like, well, maybe he meant no one called them. Maybe someone emailed, but it does. to me, it does not seem like he has a reason to lie about this. Like, there's no, even putting on airs about, like, no one has called them about him. None of this furthers his trade conversation. It does no benefit to the Titans in boosting his acquisition price, right? Like, or his acquiring Will Levis doesn't go up in price because he's saying no one has contacted them. So I don't think he's lying about that. But I do think he's being a little facetious on Will Levis will compete for a job. Unless you're saying, oh, yeah, Will's going to start the first 4 weeks while we get Cam ready, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. There's no one on this team who could truly compete with Cam Ward to start. And even if you were giving Will the chance, okay, say he has a better training camp than Ward. Are you really going to do that? Are you really going to open up that Pandora's box? Do you enjoy the fans complaining to you that much that you're going to go, we'll start Cam in week 5? Like, come on, man. You know that Cam Ward would start on this team week 1, week 4, week 5, week 18. It does not matter. Unless there is a catastrophic injury or something that keeps him off the field, there's no way that Will Levis would outright beat out Cam Ward.
Scale of 1 to 10, how surprised will you be if Will Levis is on this 53-man roster going into week 1?
I will not be surprised. Scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the least amount of shock, it would be a 2 or a 3. I would not be shocked at all if Will Levis is on this 53.
So in that case, what, the Titans are taking 3 quarterbacks?
That would make sense to me because injuries happen, and you want to have a good room, a solid room around him. But, like, to me, value-wise, you have Will Levis. You have a cheap quarterback on a cheap contract. It would just make sense to me to keep him, continue to develop him, even if that's behind another quarterback, because if he does have a miraculous turnaround, you would still own his rights. It's a lottery ticket, right? Because not similar because they're not the same player, but Jimmy Garoppolo, what were the Patriots, even though they never know they wanted to start him, they wanted to move off him to go to Tom, they were able to turn him into a draft pick. Now, if you would tell me that they would be able to get a second-round pick out of Will Levis, I think they'd turn around and do a backflip. But if you're able to do anything with him, in my opinion, it's just a cheap contract that is worth holding on to. It is not worth flipping it into an additional 6th or 7th. That does nothing for you, in my opinion.
I guess my level of surprise would be a lot higher than that because it's just not something that happens when you go into a season with, we'll call it a see-what-you-got mentality. It happens all the time in the NFL, right? For guys that aren't even first-round picks. I mean, even just in the last couple of years. The Commanders did it in the 2023 season with Sam Howell. The Falcons did it with third-round pick Desmond Ridder a couple of years ago when Arthur Smith was the head coach in Atlanta. Going into a season with a give him the keys, see what you got kind of mentality. When that see-what-you-got year goes in the opposite direction and you get your answer. We got our answer, right, on Will Levis in this iteration of the Tennessee Titans. That's not to say that Will Levis cannot be one of these reclamation projects at quarterback at some point in his career. The Titans don't have that kind of time. The Titans are not the kind of team that can afford that patience right now to wait, sit, mold, develop this quarterback, see if he can turn into something. No, you've got a coach going into year 2 after a 3-win campaign a year ago. And you've got a president of football operations calling the shots that now has been attached to back-to-back years of losing football. So the Titans don't have this luxury to wait around to see if Will Levis can become something. It doesn't mean he can't down the road. But when I think back to those 2 examples, Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder, those teams got their answer on him, shipped him off, and then moved on to their next option. The only example I can think of in recent memory, we'll say in the last 5 years, of a team that drafted a young quarterback, went into the see-what-you-got mentality, handed him the keys, and it didn't work out, and then continued to work with that quarterback. Robert, help me out if you can think of another one. To me, it's Zach Wilson. It's the only one. And Zach Wilson was relegated to a backup role. They tried to see what they had in Zach Wilson. Results were not good. They bring in Aaron Rodgers, and Wilson ends up having to start for pretty much a whole season because Rodgers ruptures his Achilles. Otherwise, it just doesn't happen. That's why I'd be really surprised if the Titans continue to try and go down this road with Will Levis. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. We'll go to the phones with Darrington. Good to hear from Darrington. Been a while. Darrington, what you got?
My brothers. I'm glad to hear y'all, man. So I know everybody, we were talking about how Callie's on hot seat and stuff, and then you listen to this new regime coming in. Do we really believe that he's actually on a hot seat and they're saying that they're building a team? Because there is no receiver that he can throw the ball to. I never believed Calvin really could be a one. He's really a two, masking as a one, and because of the situation, he has to be a one. Here, Cheek has never been consistent. He shows flashes. So would you really want to send a rookie quarterback out into that knowing of the possibility of a regression mentally versus what he could be with what you have as of now? So wouldn't you want to keep I hate to say it, a test dummy in like something of Will Levis to be out there and giving Callie more than 1 year to actually build a actual team and not just a roster, because it's a difference? I just hear your guys' opinion about this. I continue to knock it out the park. Sounds good without no buck today, neither.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Darrington. I think we agree. You're showing a lot of faith in Brian Callahan if that's the case. And I don't know that this team, especially with the recent history of ownership and the constant turnover in the front office and at head coach in the last, we'll say since 2022, in the last 3 years, I don't know that we can sit here and say with any degree of certainty that this team is going to practice that type of patience. I'd be surprised. So, yeah, I do think Callahan is under that type of pressure. How many coaches in the NFL, let's say that happens, Darrington, that scenario, as you put it, Levis has the test dummy in 2025, and then the season goes predictably, right? We can all predict how that would likely happen. And let's say the Titans even have a 2-game improvement and win 5 games in that scenario. How many coaches in the NFL can win 8 games in their first 2 years and get a year 3? It happened with Callahan and Zach Taylor in Cincinnati, notoriously one of the most patient organizations, for better or worse, in the NFL. That's not really been the case around here. So, no, I don't think that type of patience would be practiced with Brian Callahan. Somebody has to play quarterback for this team, and I understand it's a rebuild, but they're still going to try to win games this year. So it's hard for me to imagine any sort of strategy that goes directly against the idea of winning games this year and trying to show some type of improvement. You're right that they're lacking weapons at the moment, but they certainly made a lot of moves to beef up the offensive line, and they made no moves at quarterback to indicate that Cam Ward will not be the number 1 overall pick. So my level of surprise, if Levis is on the 53-man roster in week 1, is still very, very high. It just doesn't really happen. 615-737-1045. Take more of your calls when we come back, and we've got headlines to get to from NFL owners' meetings. This is 1045 The Zone.
It's time for an update on NFL headlines and from owners' meetings with Lucas Panzica.
A lot to get to here. We've got extensions. We've got declarations of confidence in new starting quarterbacks across the NFL. We've got voting on potential rule changes. A lot of headlines here from owners' meetings in Palm Beach, but there were headlines over the weekend as well from Jim Wyatt on TennesseeTitans.com, including one from President of Football Ops Chad Brinker, who stated to Jim that the report that the Titans are shopping Will Levis for a potential trade is false. They have not contacted anybody. Nobody has contacted them. He said, quote, I don't think anything has changed from the time somebody asked me about this a month ago. What's the plan with Will Levis? The plan is he has a chance to compete for a starting job next year. And that's like every player on our roster. So we ask you the question, do you believe Chad Brinker and the Titans when they say Will Levis will get the opportunity to compete for the starting job here in Nashville in 2025? 615-737-1045 is how you jump in, as we'll go back to the phones with Frank in South Carolina up next. Hey, Frank.
Hey, good afternoon. Appreciate having me on. So I think that the narrative with Will Levis not going anywhere is because he's not. Because I don't think that the Titans are going to take a quarterback at the top of the draft. I think that it's too obvious they're building up value with the dog and pony show, with everybody in Miami trying to get the biggest bag they can. And if they don't, I suspect they'll take the best player available at that spot, because this draft class reminds me most like 2007, when there were also a lot of forced hype on the two top quarterbacks at the top of that draft, and that was, of course, Brady Quinn and Jamarcus Russell. And, of course, Jamarcus went first. And then the next two players were Calvin Johnson and Joe Thomas. And I hope that's kind of where they're going, at least from my point of view. Being a Titans fan since 1989.
Okay, thanks for the call, Frank. Forced hype. And I think there's some people that would agree with that, right? Forced hype sort of being the phrase to describe this quarterback draft class at the top. There's others that would very much disagree with that. I mean, we've talked to multiple analysts at this point that believe Cam Ward is more than worthy of the number one overall pick. What I think probably will end up happening, Robert, is, fast forward to May, 2 months from now, and we're going to look back and almost feel a little bit foolish at all of the different scenarios we discussed and the idea of them trading out or taking somebody other than a quarterback, when in reality, the worst team has the number one pick and typically just takes the best quarterback with that pick.
Well, I mean, I feel like we're in a state of purgatory because the last two off seasons, the Titans have had egg on their face, or, you know what I mean? Like, one off season, we were like, oh, yeah, it's Peter Skoronski. Oh, yeah, look at all the mock drafts. It's 100% Peter Skoronski. And then it was Peter Skoronski. And then the next year it was like, oh, it's Joe Alt. We've seen this show before. It's Joe Alt. Run it up there. And then it was J.C. Latham. So I feel like Titans fans are in a state of like, do we trust it? Do we not trust it? Because there's a lot of wiggle room in there.
Yeah, which it would have been Joe Alt, worth noting, if he was available. But Chargers had the pick in front of you. They took Joe Alt. You ended up with J.C. Latham, who kicks out to the right side this year with Dan Moore Jr. coming over in free agency. Go back to the phones. Jason up next in Murfreesboro. Hey, Jason.
Hey, guys. Good to hear from you guys again. I just want to say it's pretty obvious today they're going to take Cam Ward. And the thing that I see with this year is at least maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and if I'm Cam Ward, as how you've seen the offensive line been doing, I would make sure that they put Will Levis out there first to make sure the line is good before I get myself put out there, because I'm the new protege. I want to make sure they can protect Will Levis before I go out there as a new product for your team. So that's how I see it. Put Will Levis out there for the first couple of weeks, make sure your line is good and they can protect him before I go out there.
Thanks for the call, Jason. Really leaning into the test dummy approach there.
Right, he wants him to be his body shield. Just like, well, what happens if the offensive line's not fixed? And it's like, just keep letting Levis go out there with crutches and war Band-Aids on. Like, what do we do? Cam Ward would have to start at some point, even if the offensive line was not fixed. Right? Like, wouldn't that make sense?
Yes. No, I don't think Cam Ward would be calling the shots in that regard either. 615.
Put Levis back out there.
737-1045. I will come to you on one condition. Will is up next in Nashville. Hey, Will.
Hey, fellas. Appreciate you taking the call. My thinking is it makes a ton of sense to hang on to Will Levis for a couple reasons. One being he's on his rookie deal, second round pick. His cap hit's super low. if we draft Cam Ward.
Oh, lost the line there, Will. Sorry, your call kind of faded on us there.
It was kind of, I don't know if you got the vibe from Will in Nashville, calling in pro keeping Levis. What are the chances that was Will Levis?
Next to none, because I believe he is, he's doing off-season things, spending time with family, taking some time off, training, as he should. But I would I would love the approach of, instead of calling you and saying, yeah, this is Will Levis, I don't appreciate the way you're talking about me, as cosplaying as a caller in Nashville, but still using the name and saying, I really think it's a good idea for the Titans to keep Levis. They definitely shouldn't trade him.
Oh, he's a second-round pick. You got to keep that guy.
So I'm not sure if Will in Nashville's point there was that the Titans should keep him through training camp and try to move him for a pick the way they did Malik Willis, right? I mean, we saw this movie a little bit last year with the Titans in regards to Malik Willis. Maybe it feels extreme to call it a ruse that Malik Willis was competing for the backup quarterback spot. I think we all felt pretty good about the idea that Mason Rudolph was going to be this team's backup quarterback. Hell, he was the highest paid quarterback in the room last year. But they did this going into training camp where, yeah, there's a competition between Willis and Rudolph to be QB2. But we know how that competition is going to end. And in the end, they allow Malik Willis a chance to improve, which he did, to his credit. And he flashed in the preseason, and you're able to move him for a 7th-round pick. That feels eerily similar to what's happening here with Will Levis. Whether we go into training camp with the context, the messaging around it from the Titans being that he's competing for the starting job with Cam Ward, or he's competing for the backup job with Brandon Allen, however it shakes out, if that is the context around that quote-unquote competition going into training camp, it feels like the most likely scenario is give Will Levis every chance to improve in camp and to show something in the preseason and then move him for a pick. As you continue in your pursuit of 30 draft picks in 3 years, move him for a pick before roster cutdown day.
Somebody who wasn't moved for a pick, Myles Garrett, talking about a lot of instances of why he, just trying to get us back to NFL headlines, instances of why he would be willing to go back to Cleveland. Did you hear about this?
Yes. So Myles Garrett had a lot to say in a segment with ESPN Cleveland yesterday. Not yesterday, excuse me. I saw this yesterday, but this was a few days ago. A lot of eyes are on the Browns right now, which, by the way, we're going to tell you what Jimmy Haslam had to say about the Deshaun Watson contract as he speaks down at owners' meetings. But this is Myles Garrett when asked about a young quarterback and if the Browns have kind of, well, you'll hear the question here in the audio.
And you look at the last two teams that have picked second in the draft. Houston gets C.J. Stroud. They've gone to the playoffs every year. Last year, Washington gets Jane Daniels. They go right to the playoffs. The Browns now have an opportunity, perhaps, hopefully, to find a quarterback that they think can do that. How important was that in your discussions to saying, okay, what is the plan at this position? And I'm sure you have an idea, and certainly don't share it with us here, but on that has to be a big driver in giving you comfort, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. No. Any team that's going to go far needs a quarterback and one that's young, can learn, is willing to be patient with the process, and he's not deterred or discouraged early on. There's going to be some bumps in the road. It's going to be some learning pains, but us as a team, as an organization, has to be able to be a landing pad for him, to fall back on, and being able to be on the defensive side and help him out whenever things go wrong. That's crucial. And that's not just for a young quarterback. That's for veterans and guys who have been here for a while. So. As far as quarterbacks, he's laid out a plan on whether it's one from the draft or an older guy. He's kind of laid out something that makes the future look a little bit brighter here, and makes me feel more confident about if someone were to come here, they have some help not only in their room but from some of the veterans.
So Myles Garrett there, saying the Browns have laid out an exciting plan for him at the quarterback position. Talks about every team that goes far needs a young quarterback helping them along the way.
Also thought it was funny, this was done by the Cleveland Browns, in-house media. I love that he started, the team that's taken the second quarterback the last 2 times worked out pretty well for them. That is the least, you can't say that. There's no connection between picking second and taking the second quarterback and it being relevant to the conversation about getting a good quarterback. Oh, the Commanders did it last year with Jaden Daniels. Is that what you guys hope? No, that's the anomaly, you goober. Trying to talk to Myles Garrett aren't you excited to get the second quarterback of the draft again? That's worked out the last 2 times. Shut up, you goober.
I hate that type of analysis, too, when it comes to prospects in regards to where they're coming from. That was such a big talking point when C.J. Stroud was coming out. Also, the second quarterback, obviously taken in his draft 2 years ago. But Ohio State doesn't really produce good quarterbacks in the NFL. C.J. Stroud had anything to do with any of the Ohio State quarterbacks drafted before him under different head coaches, different offensive play callers, different eras of college football. That is the worst type of analysis to me when it comes to draft prospects. Looking at a school and a prospect, say, well, this school usually, you don't really want to take an offensive lineman out of this school. Baylor doesn't really typically, that's got anything to do with the guy that you're talking about there. So I could not agree with you more on that one. So that prompts a lot of questions about the Browns quarterback situation, which we'll talk about more tomorrow because there's an interesting connection between the Browns that is being brought up and one veteran quarterback that's not on the market, but you have Myles Garrett talking about needing a young quarterback. What we do know is that Deshaun Watson won't be doing anything for the Browns this year for a few reasons. A, it's been an absolute disaster since they traded for him, gave up a haul to get him from Houston and gave him, at the time, the largest guaranteed contract in NFL history. And B, because he has a torn Achilles at the moment. Jimmy Haslam has spoken from NFL owners' meetings down in Palm Beach. And I'm pulling up the quote now from Mary Kay Cabot, who does an excellent job covering the Browns for Cleveland.com. Here's the quote. We took a big swing and miss with Deshaun. We thought we had the quarterback. We didn't, and we gave up a lot of draft picks to get him. So we've got to dig ourselves out of that hole. It was an entire organization decision, and it ends with D and I, his wife, Dee Haslam, so hold us accountable. So Jimmy Haslam out there calling Deshaun Watson a big swing and a miss, which we all knew, but he has come out and said it. Elsewhere in NFL headlines, going into NFL owners' meetings, we've got some extensions, Robert. Your Baltimore Ravens extend head coach John Harbaugh, no surprise, 3 years through the 2028 season. I have a question for you. Mike Tomlin enters his 19th season in Pittsburgh. He's the longest tenured active head coach in the NFL. Harbaugh is going into season 18 in Baltimore. Who lasts longer at their respective spot, Mike Tomlin or John Harbaugh to you?
Oh, that's tough because John's reaching that age where it's like, do you want to go hang out with your grandkids, John? Where you're getting old and you're never really winning the big one.
How old is John Harbaugh?
I'd say 60.
He's 62. He looks fantastic.
Him and his brother, both of them, whatever they're doing to stay young, keep doing it.
I mean, he's the older one, right?
Correct.
He's only 1 year older, but I feel like Jim Harbaugh looks about 7 years older than John Harbaugh.
100%. But I would lean Mike Tomlin because of the youth, despite thinking that, if he got fired, he would also have a job forever. There are teams who would fire their head coach right now to hire Mike Tomlin. At this point in the season, they would do that. So I think Tomlin would stay in the NFL longer and would probably stay with his respective team longer, only because of that. But they've been tied together, and essentially their entire careers.
There's definitely a more restless feeling among the Steelers fan base regarding Mike Tomlin than there is the Ravens fan base around Harbaugh, right?
You would think that, but the Ravens fan base, despite at least Twitter, which is a completely different fandom from being an actual fan, but Twitter despises John Harbaugh. His terrible use of timeouts, his terrible use of challenges, his terrible use of time management, his terrible, even though he doesn't call the plays, they blame play calling on John Harbaugh. So that's why no matter who you're talking about, every fan base is tired of someone that is universally liked outside of that fan base. So while you may think, the Ravens love John Harbaugh. No, they don't. Our fans are whiny too. They cannot stop whining about John Harbaugh's terrible timeouts, which you have to take some kind of negative with coaches, right? Mike Tomlin's allegiance to players that may be less of a standard, or I can coach this guy up. There are things that you're going to hate about coaches, even if you love them outside of your own organization.
We're seeing that from Tennessee fans with Rick Barnes. I mean, you talk about the loud minority on Twitter. That certainly was voiced yesterday after the loss to Houston, which is insane. Insane for a Tennessee fan to be saying things like that about Rick Barnes. Insane for a Ravens fan to be insinuating anything like that about John Harbaugh.
Yeah, just shut up and take your wins.
Yeah, no doubt. But speaking of Mike Tomlin, he spoke yesterday about the timeline of Aaron Rodgers and his decision. As we know, Rodgers had a visit in Pittsburgh, spent the whole day there. And here's a quote from Tomlin in terms of, the question of if he knows anything about Rodgers' timeline on the decision. Quote, "Not to my knowledge. I don't know that we've approached it from a deadline perspective. Certainly, as I mentioned, you'd like to have it settled, or you'd like to have settled circumstances. But, deadlines don't often bring that to a head." He was also asked if he'd be comfortable with the idea of Mason Rudolph as the starting quarterback, as Pittsburgh evaluates all potential QB acquisitions. Tomlin said, quote, "That's why we brought him back. I'm comfortable with that. We've been there before. He's a very capable guy." Of course, the Steelers gave Rudolph a 2-year, $7.5 million contract. The Titans tried to keep Rudolph here, and he heads back to Pittsburgh, the place he was drafted. So Tomlin says the meeting went well with Rodgers, but he knows nothing of Rodgers' timeline. Elsewhere, the Jets, who do have assurance on who their starting quarterback is going to be this year, GM Darren Mogi said about Justin Fields, quote, "We believe Justin is the starter. We believe in Justin. We believe we can win with Justin. So we're excited about Justin." Robert, I need to catch a breath here if we could take a quick little break. Thank you. Just needed a sip of water.
Yeah, just a little reprieve.
Yeah, catch my breath for a second. So unsurprisingly, with the money they gave Justin Fields, the Jets are committed to him as the starter. At least that's what they're saying. We brought up the Jets, at various points throughout this process as one of those maybe teams in a trade up from number 7, or at least calling the Titans from number 7. And you imagine this would take them out of the running for a quarterback with that number 7 pick. We also talked about the Raiders. Maybe not as one of those teams that could try to trade up to 1. They certainly could. They're in that range in the top 10. But as a team that could draft a young quarterback to sit and develop behind Geno Smith, who only has 1 year left on his current deal, which, of course, was acquired by Vegas after they traded for Geno Smith with Seattle. Pete Carroll, new Raiders head coach, says the Seahawks are trying to extend Geno Smith, that they're working on a contract extension to keep him in Vegas. Geno is 34 years old. He'll turn 35 about midway through this upcoming season. Do you think, what's more likely, Robert, that Geno Smith is the Raiders starting quarterback in 2 years, or that it's ex-young quarterback that they draft in the next couple of drafts, whenever that might be?
I would go with that it is ex-young quarterback. But then it brings my question to you. If you're Geno Smith, do you want to sign this extension before the Raiders potentially draft a rookie quarterback that shows promise? Or do you want to wait and avoid a Kirk Cousins situation where I'm going to be tied to a team to have to be the backup, to have to start in case they do draft a rookie quarterback? Would you rather have the security, or would you rather have the opportunity to start for more than just this year? If you're Geno Smith, that's a tough question to ask.
So the Seahawks, or excuse me, there I am with Pete Carroll. The Raiders are discussing extending Geno Smith. Meanwhile, there's one team in the AFC that is handing out extensions all over the place, but they notably have not given an extension to one of their best players from last season. We'll talk about that and wrap up the show with some polls coming up next. Wrapping up the show. Last call for phone calls, 615-737-1045. Appreciate you guys hanging out with Robert and myself. Buck down at owners' meetings through Wednesday. We will be back with him in studio on Thursday morning. But before we get to the polls to close things out, multiple extensions happening in Buffalo this offseason. The latest, 24-year-old cornerback Christian Benford, 4 years, $76 million. So he joins a list of players that includes, obviously, Josh Allen, 6 years, $330, defensive end Gregory Rousseau, linebacker Terrell Bernard, wide receiver Khalil Shakir. But, Robert, there is one glaring omission here from this list of players the Bills have extended this offseason, and it's a guy who led the NFL in rushing touchdowns, James Cook, who had a phenomenal season for Buffalo last year, was a 1,000-yard rusher, 4.9 yards per carry, smashed a career high with 16 rushing touchdowns. And Sean McDermott says the Bills were unable to get something done with him this offseason. He heads into the final year of his rookie contract with Buffalo. When we had the discussion about the running back position, really for the last couple of years, but it felt like it really came to a head last year when the Giants decided to part ways with Saquon Barkley. And then we saw the season that Saquon had. We saw the season Derrick Henry had, over 1,900 yards. And that discussion kind of came back around, but in the context of, okay, is it bouncing back upwards for that position? Is the NFL again being reminded of the importance of the running back position? And is that going to help guys like James Cook that are about to be due and are going to get more money than they would have even 2 years ago? In the case of James Cook, it's no. And just generally, if you're not named Saquon Barkley, that answer seems to be no. Seems to be just business as usual in this day and age of the NFL and how teams pay the running back position, where even Derrick Henry, Robert, is insanely underpaid. And Saquon Barkley is absolutely the exception, not the rule.
If I was to ask you what was the highest number given to an unrestricted free agent this year, what would you say the highest bit of money given out is? So no re-signings, no contract extensions, nothing like that. Just strictly
total money?
Just total money, strictly free agents.
Oh, what, 82? Oh, 100? No. Was Max Crosby?
No, to running backs.
Running backs, I'm sorry. Unrestricted free agent. Was it Najee? I mean,
it was Najee.
$9 million.
It was a 1-year deal where the base value is 5.25.
Up to 9. Right?
Up to 9. And the Buffalo Bills are number 2 at running back spending this offseason, signing Ty Johnson to a 2-year, $4 million deal. How much money is Jared Cook going to get?
James Cook,
excuse me. How much money is he going to get?
Jared Cook, Titans legend.
You would assume that he would get a great throwback name.
Oh, yeah.
I would always draft him in my Madden Dynasty or what the hell are those things called where you draft all your fantasy players. Either way, Jared Cook, great name. How much money is he going to get? If they're already spending for a third down back in Ty Johnson, they have to believe that he would be replaceable, which I would agree with him. Why would you not just draft another running back in this stacked running back class and move along about it? The only reason, and you could argue this if you're a Bills front office member, the only reason you tied the league lead for touchdowns was because Josh Allen didn't quarterback sneak on those plays. Like, it would be very... And that's kind of where it's at for Cook. Do you want to go back and be on a good team that you're familiar with, or do you want to go out and make $5 million on a less than desirable team? It's a tough pill to swallow if you're a running back in this market.
I mean, even the idea that there's a world here in 2025 where Derrick Henry makes less than Najee Harris, it's just insane to think about. And, that would mean Najee maximizing his up to in his contract and getting that full $9 million for the 1 year in LA. But we know Derrick Henry signed that 2-year, $16 million deal with the Ravens, $9 million of it in guaranteed money. His cap hit is at 12.8 in 2025. So, yeah, the Saquon season is not having the ripple effect that running backs across the league probably hoped it would. Turns out they're just saying that's a Saquon thing, and we can make do. We'll be okay with whoever else we put in there.
Yeah, if anything, I think it hurt the running back market because anyone who's not a difference maker, they're just going to continue to pay you bottom of the barrel prices. If you're not a Derrick Henry or not someone who can take over a game, why the hell would we not just pay you bottom of the barrel and keep drafting guys until we find somebody like that? And then when their rookie contract's done, we're going to do the exact same thing with him. Some other notable running backs on the free agent market, J.K. Dobbins, who had a great year with the Chargers, still waiting on a contract.
Wow. Yeah, Dobbins, who had a phenomenal year. Actually, no. Okay, I'm seeing a story that is not the case. This is a prediction about J.K. Dobbins and where he's going to sign. Somebody projecting that he signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who offloaded Najee Harris, obviously. Dobbins, 26 years old, the obviously second-round pick by the Ravens out of Ohio State, 13 games played, his healthiest season since his rookie year in Baltimore, but definitely his most productive season of his career, over 900 yards and 9 touchdowns. So, yes, the running back market, unfortunately, was not moved as much as maybe some people thought it would be with the years Saquon and Derrick had. Let's do some polls. Polls are presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer.
The first poll for the day, should the Tush push be banned? 64% of the audience says no, 35% saying yes, it should be. I think it should not be. Lucas, where do you stand?
I don't have a strong opinion on it one way or the other. I get both sides. I probably would vote no. Even though I said earlier, if you can't pull somebody, why can you push somebody? But if I'm in there and I'm casting a vote, yeah, I'm saying stop it. It's been stopped before. It is possible, right? It's not 100% hit rate, and there's nobody that does it to the level of the Eagles. So, yeah, I probably would vote no, it shouldn't.
Do you believe the Titans when they say Will Levis will have a chance to compete for the starting job? 71% say no, 28% say yes. And Andrew in Portland in the comments, they've held true to everything they've said thus far. So, yes, I do. Do you believe that Will Levis has an actual chance to compete for this job?
Not if this team drafts Cam Ward with the number 1 overall pick. Definitely not. I get that they've held true to everything they've said about the draft in terms of taking their time, keeping options open. But they told us in last year's training camp that Malik Willis was competing for the backup job. And yeah, sure, I guess it was a competition, but we all knew Mason Rudolph was going to end up with the backup position over Malik Willis. So if the Titans do have Will Levis in camp going into a quarterback room with Cam Ward, they can say he's going to compete for the starting job, but it'll just remind me of when the Jags said that when they drafted Trevor Lawrence and they had Gardner Minshew. Oh, yeah, that's a competition. We don't know who's going to start. Yes, we do.
Vols fans, which loss was more painful? The college football playoff loss to Ohio State or the Elite Eight against Houston? 51% going with Houston, the other 48% lying on the Ohio State side. What hurt you more, Lucas?
Oh, that is close right there. Only 51% saying the Elite Eight. I'm going the Elite Eight. Just being that close to history, just one step away. That probably, and to see the end of that era, right? Tennessee football will run it back in a sense next year. You lose a lot of pieces, but Nico Iamaleava back as your quarterback, looking to take a year 2 leap. End of a season, end of an era, and steps away from your first Final Four. That was a tough pill to swallow.
Stormy Mitchell agrees with you. Both proved that we weren't at the level that we thought we were, but both were positive steps in the right direction. You learned far more from losing than winning. The best is yet to come. You love a positive Vol. Was this Rick Barnes' best opportunity to make a Final Four? 67% of the audience say yes, 32% say no. What say you?
I say no. I mean, I think you could argue the Admiral Schofield Grant Williams team was better than this one. I think you could certainly argue the Dalton Connect version of this team was better than this one last year. It's just a thing that we say, right? When you come up so close but short. Are those the polls?
That's it.
And that's the show. Appreciate you guys hanging out. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Buck will chime in from NFL owners meetings, and maybe we'll have some sort of news on the Tush Push. Lane and Zach, cover 2, coming up next on 104.5 The Zone.